manager is, and I think the other board members are gonna be there downstairs.
Great.
Yeah, I see them. Yeah, David, I saw the board members, they're there right now, so that's good. And if for some reason, you know, John should not be able to continue, we'll assume that you'll pick it up wherever he left off. Is that okay with you?
Yeah, just like I don't know who records the minutes, whether it's Floanne, you know, the town clerk. I think it's a good idea that we memorialize this, you know, to be, you know, in place for the records. I mean, the select board voted, I believe it was a few meetings ago, just to prepare in case something happened. And then John is the elected moderator, and then I think it's going to be fine. I mean, he's logged on and everything, but we need to be procedurally that it's a good idea just to memorialize everything.
Yeah, DeForest Beers is taking our minutes.
Okay, good.
Yeah.
I don't see her on here yet, though.
No, that's why we'll wait. And we're also gonna record this, and we had a clerk take the minutes on Thursday night at Mount Scottney, and then we sent her we were able to also send her the recording, so, in both cases. And we'll get this recording up
How do I get?
in a bunch of places as soon as we
raise my
can,
hand here or something?
as soon as this afternoon.
Okay.
We're still admitting people,
And John, make sure you.
so we'll give it a few minutes.
David, would you contact John and tell him that I'd like to speak sometime during the meeting?
Yes, I will. Are you on your phone, John?
No, I'm at the town office.
Okay.
I should be signed on.
Yeah.
Yeah, we're getting feedback like crazy too.
Yeah, you gotta turn your phone. BJ?
Okay.
We have two hands raised, and Olivia Savage and DeForest Pierce.
John, you're under as Olivia.
Olivia Savage, I believe, was John Arison. Oh, okay.
Okay, that's John, okay. And who was the other one?
Olivia, did you?
DeForest, and she's the one that is taking the minutes.
Okay, DeForest is on. DeForest, did you have a question?
I just want to let you know, so I'm not gonna be logged. That way I can use my computer to take the minutes and I'll put it on the computer here at the town office. That's why I'm not logged into your meeting.
No, that's fine, and that's.
Thank you, DeForest.
I'll send you a recording also.
That would be terrific, thank you. I'm gonna log off now.
All right, thanks, DeForest. I've got 10:02, and I think we can wait a couple more minutes.
Brandon, how do you switch cameras? Camera's pointed the other way. Never mind, I got it. I got it.
This is going to be very interesting. Hi, Florian.
John Harrison, I can see you perfectly now, so that's good.
Oh, look at that.
Some people may not have.
Where is our other?
You look good on camera.
John Broker Campbell, we just, John Harrison, did you have a preference as to when you spoke?
I have, yeah, after we'll do the introductions of the non-residents, I'll give John a few minutes to say his piece about the legislature.
Perfect.
Perfect, thank you.
Thank you. Okay, maybe while we wait, before we start recording, this is David Baker, I'm superintendent of the Windsor Southeast Supervisory Union. And it's good to see everybody this morning. This is going to be an experiment in fine living for all of us because we've never done a meeting like this before. So we're going to try to do it with a level of accuracy, and we will record once we go over some of the ground rules on
Sure, we're not getting
meetings.
feedback.
If you notice when you have your mouse or cursor and you bring it down to the bottom, if you're watching on screen, you'll see a tab bar, and you'll see a microphone, a way to hang up. You'll see your camera. You'll see a little raised hand. there. And then you can also, you won't need to worry about those turn on captions. You could turn on captions if you wanted to, but you won't need that necessarily. Up at the top right-hand corner, you'll see a participants list. You see those two little heads there, that's the participants list. Next to that is the chat box. So if you're not able to turn your mic on and you want to ask a question, you could type it into that chat box. I think it's going to be really important for all of us to know where the mute button is, because we will get feedback.
David?
Go ahead.
Can you ask Sappa TV to turn off their thing, because we're getting feedback actually from you right now from Sappa TV.
Okay, let me go to Sappa TV.
They already turned it off just now.
Okay, they did turn it off. And I know sometimes it's easy to forget, but just try to stay muted unless you have a question or a comment. And most of those are going to come after each article is read or at the end of the presentation. So just be aware of that. It's also not a bad idea. Turn your camera off. And that's not because we don't like the way you look, but it saves a little bit of internet capacity. If you have your camera off, the main speakers and the board and all of the public officials will probably keep their camera on, just so you can see us as we introduce ourselves. But we may even turn our camera off at some point as well, just to help with the internet capacity. So again, always muted, preferential, keep the camera off, and then let's go to raise hand. Raise hand is an important one because that's how John Broca Campbell will recognize you. And we're going to keep an eye on that raised hand to help him out. That raised hand is anytime you have a question or a comment, you'll raise your hand. The important thing is, once you're called on, you should identify yourself and then hit that button again, because it'll take your hand down. It's very common. It's very common that people will keep their hand up, and then John Broca Campbell will think you have another question. So just take it down once you are recognized. John will probably go over some of this also, but I think sort of following the protocols of town meetings and annual school district meetings, we want to make sure everybody gets a chance for voice and gets a chance to speak. So sometimes what we'll do is we'll make the circle with the hands, and we won't go back to a person's second question until we've heard from everybody else. But I'll let John, if John wants to go over those ground rules as well. Once I start recording, John will call the meeting to order, and then I believe we have a pledge of allegiance to the flag, which John will go over that as well, and then we will start the formal annual school district meeting for 2021. So all of that being said, we now have 57 people, and you have tripled the number of people who showed up at the Mount Scottney School District meeting the other night. So that shows how invested everybody in Weathersfield is in their school and in their community. So that's great. So unless there are any questions, or John, did you have anything to add before we start recording?
Just one quick reminder. I think you went over, David. Just if everybody could just please mute themselves to start, and then unmute if you have a question, and we'll call on you, and then hit unmute. That'd be great.
And even while we're saying the pledge, it's good to just stay muted because it does get a little tricky once we unmute. If you are on the telephone, right? Because there was a dial-in opportunity here. If you are on the phone, and it looks like most people are here live and in person, which is great. But if you are on the phone, then the way to mute is *6. The way to unmute is *6. So you can mute and unmute on the phone as well. If you want to know who's in the meeting, because you may not see everybody's faces on the screen, you can click on those two little people, that little people icon up in the upper right-hand corner, and you'll get a list of all the participants. Okay, if there are no further questions or comments, Anne Marie and John, do you have nothing to add at this point? You're pretty good? Okay, I'm going to start recording the meeting, and that'll take just a few seconds.
Okay.
And you'll see it pop up in the upper left-hand corner. It'll say, we are now recording, and John Roper Campbell, it is all yours to call us to order.
Great, thanks David, thanks for the overview. Again, if folks have questions, type them into the chat function. So it is 10:10. I think we should go ahead and call the meeting to order, and we'll start with Pledge of Allegiance. Anne Marie has a flag behind her, and we'll go from there.
Flag of the United States of America, to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thanks. So, the school district of Weathersfield, Vermont, warning for annual meeting, Saturday, February 27th, 2021. We're voting on Tuesday, March 2nd, 2021. The legal voters of the Weathersfield School District, Weathersfield, Vermont, are hereby notified and warned to meet virtually on Saturday, February 27th, 2021 at 10 o'clock in the morning to transact any business not involving voting by Australian ballot or any voting required by law to be by ballot. Such meeting, so started, shall be adjourned to Tuesday, March 2nd, 2021. The legal voters of the Weathersfield School District are further notified and warned to meet at the Martin Memorial Hall in Ascutney, Vermont on Tuesday, March 2nd, 2021 at 10 o'clock in the forenoon to act on any business involving voting by Australian ballot or any voting required by law to be by ballot. Polls open at 10 o'clock in the morning and close at 7 p.m. Before we get started, we'll do a couple of introductions. There are a handful of folks in the meeting who are not town residents, and I would ask folks in the meeting to give them permission to speak. They include, and if you could raise your hands when I say your name, David Baker, who's the superintendent. Jean Marie Oakman is the principal. Angela Ledoux, the director of curriculum and instruction. And Ed Connors, who is the business manager. And then before we get to the articles, let me turn it over to John Harrison for just a minute.
Oh, John, can we add one more to that list of non-residents? Sorry, Katie Ahern is here too?
Sure. And Katie Ahern. So if there are no objections to those non-residents speaking, that'd be appreciated. We're going to go to John Harrison now.
Thank you. First, I'd like to thank the voters of Cavendish and Weathersfield for electing me for the privilege of representing you in what's supposed to be Montpelier, but so far it's been in my living room, and I'm wearing out my recliner watching Zoom meetings. I asked to speak at the school meeting. Traditionally, the reps and senators have usually spoke at town meeting, but because my committee assignment is to education, I thought it was appropriate to address at the school board meeting. Like I said, my committee assignment is to education, a few statistics. The education fund in Montpelier handles about $2 billion. So that's what the state of Vermont is spending on education. It's actually north of $2 billion. I'd like to review several bills that are in our committee now, and we expect to have voted out week after next. Actually, this coming week, we're on what's called town meeting break, and then when we come back, we expect these bills to be voted on the floor. The first one is a literacy bill. Scientific evidence, and it's been proven out that one of the reasons that we spend an enormous amount of money on individual education plans is because all students are not at an adequate level when they reach fourth grade. This bill is designed with funding to take care of it so that all students can be screened properly and be educated in literacy to a fourth grade level. And when you stop and think about it, if you reach fourth grade and you can't read, what happens? You struggle for the rest of your school career, and you quite conceivably will struggle as an adult. So it's very important that we get all the kids that we can and screen the ones that need special care. And in the long run, this actually should save a considerable amount of money because it should help with the IEPs that we currently fund. A bill that I've worked on quite extensively is the beginning step in reinstituting construction, state aid to construction of schools. I will say that in hindsight, Weathersfield was very fortunate to get in when we did to consolidate our two schools and get a very nice facility, which the school has taken very good care of. However, an enormous number of schools are struggling right now. They can't get bond votes passed. There's no state aid. State aid was froze shortly after our project was finished. There was a backlog of money that could not be supported, and they had to freeze it because the state bonding ability just wouldn't support it. So the state aid for building bonds has not existed since shortly after ours. It looks like our bond will be paid off in 2027, 28, and that's something to look forward to. The bill that's currently finding its way through committee and onto the floor will assess all 315 school buildings in Vermont for need. An area in the state that has been chronically underfunded, and the school buildings are in dire need of repairs. The Northeast Kingdom, although there are others. Like I said, if you look around Weathersfield and even Windsor and other towns, you go, what's the need? Well, the need is there. Several schools that have bond votes fail because the number is just too high. They need the state support. Another bill that's finding its way through committee and will be on the floor is a bill called Community Schools. And to make a short summary of what this is about, it's to better utilize our structures. There's a good example of a community school in Bennington called Molly Stark School, where they offer dental care within the school, medical care for the kids within the school. They offer extensive summer programs. And when you stop and think about it, we've got a beautiful facility that basically the lights are off in the summer and aren't being used. Another bill that I think is going to be on a fast track is, and this one's a little bit boring for most people, the current software that the state requires our district to use for reporting into the state, to be quite blunt, is a dismal failure. Ed Connor, if he's on, I'm sure would back me up on that. I won't go into that any farther. One thing that is coming down the pipe, and it's a law that was passed last year, is a change in education funding. It's going to shift some of the money around the state to different areas. When the Supreme Court Brigham decision was passed, it required all of Vermont, the state of Vermont, to give equal education to all students. And a weighting formula was developed to give students a weight that was supposed to equalize the way the money was distributed. The numbers that were used were arbitrary and have proven not to be adequate to fulfill the goal of the Brigham decision. There was a weighting study done, and those numbers are going to change. There's going to be more factors figured into it. I know that there's been a test run that the school districts can use to see how you're going to make out, but in a nutshell, there's going to be, I don't like to use the word winners and losers, but that's more or less what it's going to be. Some people, district towns are going to go up and some are going to go down. Money is going to shift so that all districts within the state of Vermont will receive an adequate amount of funding so they can educate their students. One thing I'd like to just mention when you're discussing the school budget, that a lot of people look at that number and are still under the impression that that is raised completely with taxes at the municipal level, and that isn't true. I can give you some 24% of the $2 billion is raised from resident education tax. The rest comes from non-resident tax, which is a fixed number. Every town in the state has the same tax rate. 100% of the sales and use tax that you pay when you make purchases within Vermont goes to the education fund. 33% of your vehicle purchase tax goes to the education fund. 25% of a rooms and meals tax when you go out to eat goes to the education fund, and 100% of the lottery money goes to the education fund. And a good share of the $2 billion also comes from the federal government. And I'll wrap it up there. Thank you very much.
Great, thanks, John. So just one quick request as we get into the articles, since I can only see a handful of folks on the screen, and don't know many who are in the meeting. If you make a motion or second a motion to pass an article, if you could state your name when you make that motion, it would be much appreciated. And with that, let's get going. So here we go. Article 1, to approve the reports of the school district officers from July 1, 2019 to June 30, 2020 by Australian ballot. Do I hear a motion? Don't forget
John,
to
this
unmute yourself.
is David. Yeah, John, this is David Baker. Can you hear me?
Yep.
Yeah. So just so you know, yeah, and actually we're going to put the PowerPoint up with the ballots, and this may just be a point of order, and I think you can do it either way if people want to. I mean, they can approve the article, but the bottom line is the article is going to be voted on by Australian ballot. So I think really it's just more about questions on the article, comments, concerns, because this will get approved or disapproved by Australian ballot on March 2nd.
If we're comfortable just not approving the article, then we can carry on to the next article if there are no additional questions on Article 1. Seeing none, we'll go to Article 2. To see if the school district will vote to authorize the school board to borrow money in anticipation of taxes to meet the requirements of the school district for the ensuing year, and to authorize the execution and delivery of notes or orders to the school district. Again, being voted on by Australian ballot. Is there any discussion on Article 2? Okay. Article 3. To elect all school district officers as required by law. Again, voted on by Australian ballot. Any discussion on Article 3? All right, we're moving now. Article 4. Shall the voters of the Weathersfield School District approve the school board to expend $6,573,775, which is the amount the school board has determined to be necessary for the ensuing fiscal year. It is estimated that this proposed budget, if approved, will result in education spending of $20,526.56 per equalized pupil. This projected spending per equalized pupil is 10.11% higher than the spending for the current year. Again, voted on by Australian ballot on Tuesday. And let's stop here for discussion and a presentation by the school board.
Yeah, so again, this is David Baker, John, and I know that we do have a PowerPoint, and Anne Marie, our board chair, is going to lead us through that if there's no objection. So Anne, do you want to take it from here?
Yes, David. I just also want to first introduce the school board and the staff. I'll start with myself, and then if everybody can just introduce themselves. I'm Anne Marie Redmond, and I'm the school board chair at Weathersfield School. Kristen, do you want to go next?
I'm Kristen Brusso. I'm the secretary for the school board.
Mark?
I'm Mark Youngling, and I'm on the school board and the rep to the supervisory union.
Jackie?
Jackie?
I'm Jackie Antonovich, and I'm on the school board as well as the teacher negotiations committee.
And our newest member, Jamie?
Hi, I'm Jamie Turner, and I'm on the school board.
Okay, and then David, you want to start the staff introductions?
Yeah, I will. David Baker, I've already introduced myself, superintendent. Angie, do you want to go next?
Hi, I'm Angie Ladue. I'm the Director of Curriculum and Instruction for Windsor Southeast Supervisory Union.
Katie?
Hi, I'm Katie Ahern. I'm the Director of Student Support Services at the Supervisory Union.
And Ed, our business manager. Ed, are you on?
Yeah, I'm here. Ed Connors, business manager, Windsor Southeast.
Yeah, and then the local administrators and backbone of our school, Jean Marie.
My name is Jean Marie Oakman, and I am the very proud principal of the Weathersfield School, wrapping up my 11th year here.
And the real backbone of the school, BJ. BJ, do you want to introduce yourself?
BJ Esty, Secretary of the Weathersfield School.
Did we leave anybody out? I think that's everybody in.
Okay, great. I also would like to thank the BAC. That included Jamie Turner before she joined us in the school board, Janine Saragusa, and Becky Christinger. They helped us to look over this budget and do the best job we could for the students and for the residents of Weathersfield. I'd also love to give a big shout out to BJ for all her help in getting this presentation together and everything else she does too for the school. And I'd also like to thank former board chair Sean Whalen and former board member Robin Tyndall for their service to the school board in the past year. I guess we can get started now. Next slide. Jackie?
Jackie's getting it going here.
Okay, my first slide is about how we meet the needs of students and their families. We offer families a choice of remote learning, hybrid learning, that's a combination of in-person and remote, and home study. Special education for kids who qualify, support for at-risk kids who are not served through IEPs, with programs such as We Are Hope. Advanced 8th grade math students may access high school algebra. Expanded food program, a delicious food program, I have to tell you. I've sampled it myself and it's great. So the kids are very lucky at our school. We also receive a lot of help from a foundation called the Hicks-Nichols Grant, and PTA funding and other grants bring all kinds of extras to our school. In pre-COVID times, they had a very cool program last year of gymnastics, and it was a circus, right? It was a circus program. It was so amazing. Our kids are so lucky. There's also the Four Winds program, which is a nature-based curriculum where volunteers come to the school. That also couldn't be done this year due to COVID, but it's a great program, and we're excited to have it back as soon as we can safely do so. There's also the PAUSE program. That is not a school-funded program. It's based on donations and payments from families, but that serves families and shares our facility. But we're also not able to offer that due to COVID, but we'll resume as soon as possible. Safe and healthy school. We follow all the COVID guidelines. We've been in school for over 100 days now. We've had very high attendance by students, staff, and teachers. Very few cases of COVID, and none, I believe, that were transferred within the school, but outside of school. So we've done really great. Next slide. What's new this year? Despite the pandemic, 2 major items were added to the school property. We added solar panels. They were installed, and we're anticipating a savings of 15% on our school electric bill moving forward. Total anticipated savings is $250,000 over the next 25 years. We also put up an outdoor classroom for student and community use. and you can see a picture of it here on the slide. It's very cool. It was made possible by very generous grants from the Hicks-Nichols Fund and other anonymous people. So, next slide.
Oh, back one.
You went to. There we go.
Yeah, you got it.
The COVID-19 factor. The pandemic has negatively affected our budget. The state retirement fund experienced an increase in spending for teacher retirements due to the high number of teachers retiring because of COVID. Premium to the retirement system on all teachers hired after 2015 may increase. Costs related to safe and healthy guidance from the AOE. We're anticipating state and federal reimbursement for much of those costs, but we can only anticipate it. And some good news is that help may be on the way. We may see a relief package to help struggling state and local governments and schools. It may not be known, though, exactly how many funds we'll be getting or how much help will be arriving before voting takes place next Tuesday. So hopefully the tax rate will even be a little lower. Next slide is sources for funds for our school. We receive funds from local taxes, the State of Vermont Education Fund, federal government grants, private grants, such as the Hicks-Nichols, Walmart, the Byrne Foundation, etc. We also, the PTA does fundraising. We have very generous donations from teachers, staff, parents, community, and other organizations. And we receive a lot of volunteers, which that actually adds up to dollars saved by the school, and that's in non-COVID years, of course. Next slide. Volunteers rock. On a non-COVID year, Weathersfield welcomes volunteers into our school, and usually we receive about 100 volunteers per year, and that's on things like the Budget Advisory Committee, Coaching for Sports, Four Winds, Hicks-Nichols Committee, PTA, Book Fair, chaperoning various events, academic teams, and PLP mentors. The volunteers contribute approximately $50,000 in in-kind service every year in savings to our school by having those volunteers. Next slide. We want to express gratitude to all those volunteers. We're so happy, and we hope to have you back next year. Next slide. Our goals for the FY22 budget: to maintain a staffing plan and program of studies which supports the whole child, intellectually, emotionally, socially, and physically, to meet the Vermont education quality standards set by the State Board of Education, and to retain the trust of voters by bringing forth a responsible budget. Next slide. Okay, this is the projected enrollment slide, and this table shows how many students are projected to be in class next September. This includes students currently learning from home, either through the school-provided remote learning option or homeschooled. Some of these students may not return, but we have to budget for them. One line I would like to point out for people just to kind of put back in their head, just to remember for a future slide, is the 6th grade class with 33 students. That's a lot of kids in one grade for us, and is something to think about for future planning when we talk about high school choice. Next slide. The next slide is our K through 12 student enrollment, and we have 4 years back of actual enrollment and then projected for next year. As you can see, there's an asterisk underneath the FY 2021 actual for the 9 through 12. We had 16 high school students move in and only 4 move out in the past year. That's quite unusual, and we attribute that probably due to COVID and people moving to Vermont, which is, of course, a very safe state, and we're very proud of that here. And I think a lot of people have seen the numbers here, and they've just decided that it's a great place to live, and so they've moved here. And we've had a big influx in students. So that's 12 new high school students. Last year, we only budgeted for 86 students, so that was quite an increase for us. Next slide. These are the FY22 projected high school tuition students. And on this slide, you can see It gives more detail about how much we pay for each student and how much those went up this past year. Currently, Weathersfield has school choice for high school students, and we don't have any restrictions. Students may choose any school that meets state requirements. For any public school they choose, we pay the full rate set by that school. For any private school, we pay $16,609, and the student and their family pay the rest. As you can see, tuition cost has risen considerably. Springfield, where tuition rates went up almost $1,700 per student, was one of the highest increases. We're also dealing with those extra 16 high school students than we projected for in our budget. You'll see on the next slide, but still stay on this one, that those two things combined caused us a huge increase. And then also, we have to think about the 33 students that are going to be coming up in the 6th grade. So while this not as big an increase, when that happens, we could see a large increase in the year those students move to the 9th grade. The reason I mention this is that we may want to think about putting some limits on school choice, particularly if this budget doesn't pass. I would like to get an idea, and this is in the question and answer time, of how the town feels about that. Nothing can be changed on this topic at this time, but I'm just hoping to get a little feel for how people are feeling about that subject, because we can't easily find $400,000 to cut. And we don't have any choice but to pay the high school tuition. So if this budget doesn't pass, we would have to cut from the K through 8 students. Something that we could, however, do in the future is designate between 1 and 3 schools. Then we could negotiate with those schools for tuition costs. Most of our students already go to one of 3 schools, Windsor, Woodstock, or Springfield. You'll notice our totals are all the highest for those 3. There's only a handful of students that go elsewhere. Students would still be able to go to other schools, but they would pay the difference in cost. This or any other change in school choice would, however, need to be voted on by Australian ballot and will not happen in time to help us with this year's budget. Next slide. FY22 general fund projected budget slide. On this slide, you can see the total increase of this year's budget is $414,803. You'll note this almost matches, and actually is a little bit below, the $440,561 high school tuition increase. In other years, tuition increase have fluctuated about $50,000. If this had been the case again this year, we would be looking at little or no increase over last year's budget. Most of the other items in the budget remained even due to strategic cuts that Principal Oakman made in an attempt to zero fund this year's budget to keep taxes from increasing. The Budget Advisory Committee also made further recommendations when it became clear that we needed to do something more to help lower the tax increase that we were facing. Those cuts included the We Are Hope program, summer school, foreign language, and the athletics bus. We very much hope to be able to bring these programs back as funding allows. A couple of items that may stand out if you're looking over the numbers are the transportation and SU assessment lines. But I just wanted to assure everyone that this actually is caused by transportation moving from the Weathersfield budget to the SU budget, so it all just balances out. It's really not a difference in cost. Some good news is that we are planning on saving on energy costs due to our new solar panels, so you'll see a decrease in that line, so that's great. Next slide. Shared expenses across the SU. Sharing some significant services across the SU helped to avoid a forced merger under Act 46. Achieving economy of scale, payroll, IT, HR, special education, maintenance and curriculum, buffering budgetary impacts of students moving into or out of the district, especially as with special ed, balancing some loss of direct local control with the benefits of savings and shared risk. The food service program, that's an example of reclaiming if a shared arrangement wasn't working out for us. But actually now they've all joined in with us because our food service program was so great. Transportation is another one, and that was just started this past year. Next slide. The supervisory union assessments. This includes special education, technology, the SU office, and the early childhood program. The budgeted amounts are based on last year's totals and what we already know about next year. At year end, if the actual amount spent is more than the total paid by all parties, we get an extra bill to make up the difference. Next slide. This is the SU projected assessments, and so you can see the difference between the budget and then this year. And this again, you'll note the assessment from last year to this year, that larger increase this past year is due to transportation moving over. Otherwise, our SU assessment actually was slightly lower this year than last year. Next slide. This is the big one, the impact on school taxes. Our current tax rate is $1.7879. Our proposed budget is $6,573,775. The new tax rate is $1.97. This 18.56-cent increase is primarily caused by the high school tuition cost increase, which was up 28% or $440,561. Tuition cost per high school student in FY22 will average $20,000, and that is for the tuition alone. We also have our SU assessment costs for those students, because our SU assessment is actually based on our overall student numbers, not just our K through 8 numbers. And that includes special ed costs, which can be very high at some of these high schools. In addition, our common level of appraisal went down by 0.83%, and our equalized pupil number went down by 2.96%. That's very complicated, and all you need to know is that it's not good when those numbers go down. To get the tax rate, the state takes our budget and uses formulas to figure out our equalized pupil number to adjust for our CLA. I want to stress that the CLA, as the common level of appraisal, doesn't really affect the amount of taxes paid. The problem I see is that it affects people's perception that the school budget is causing it to look like more of an increase than it really is. Our budget was up $414 and that would be a 6.73% increase, but you'll be voting on a 10.11% increase. And that most of the difference between those two numbers is due to our CLA being $93.11 instead of $100. But it still doesn't mean you'd actually pay any more, because if your house was assessed at more, it would all work out in the end to the same amount of money. It's just the perceived thing when people go to vote of seeing a 10% increase as opposed to seeing a lower increase. Vermont does this, they do the CLA thing to make sure that everyone is paying fairly based on the value of their property. So a town that just did assessments and has their properties taxed at their full value aren't paying more than people in towns that haven't assessed in a while. One positive thing to note, however, is that the state education fund is no longer showing a shortfall. So the 9% increase that they had warned us about this fall and into the winter is not going to happen. So that's awesome, because our taxes are high enough, right? Next slide, please. Tax rate. Current tax rate is $1.7879. The new tax will be $1.9735. This is an increase of 18.56 cents from last year. So if your home is worth $100,000, you will see an increase of $186 for your year property taxes. If your home is worth $250,000, you'll see an increase of $464. An increase of $928 is equivalent to $77.33 per month. This number does not include reductions due to income sensitivity. Anyone making less than $136,500 should go to the Vermont State website or call the town hall to get forms to fill out, because your taxes will be lowered pretty significantly if you make less than $95,000 a year. You pay based on a percentage of your income rather than paying based on what we're presenting you with today. And those forms need to be filled out every year, not just once and it's done. Every single year you need to fill those out and file them with your state income tax. If I can have you take anything away from our presentation today, it is that the increase this year is caused by a huge unexpected increase in high school tuition costs. The only thing we can cut is from K through 8. So if this budget doesn't pass, that is where the cuts will have to be coming from. We can't avoid paying for high school tuition, and any changes we might decide in the future to make won't affect the amount we need to pay next year. And I guess next slide, and we'll be, Angie Ledoux will be taking over a presentation.
Thank you, Anne Marie. I've been invited here today to speak to you about the Portrait of the Graduate work and our strategic planning work that we've been doing for the last 2 years. The Portrait of the Graduate, I've spoken about at school board meetings as well as other meetings across our supervisory union. In April of 2019, the administrative team attended a workshop where we heard a very interesting presentation about the Portrait of the Graduate and the potential the Portrait of a Graduate provides a school system for direction in meeting the needs of all learners, all of our future learners, our students who are in our schools today and who will be in our schools in the future. The Portrait of a Graduate process, next slide please, was a process that we started last fall in 2020, and it was through a committee that I'm trying to get my slides in order there. So the Portrait of a Graduate process started with a group of representatives of all 4 of our school communities across the supervisory union. We had students, we had teachers and staff members, we had parents, we had community leaders, we had administrators and board members from all of our communities, and that was over 60 people that attended 4 meetings between September and January of September 2019 to January of 2020. The Portrait of Graduate process started with a wide overview of the future of our society, the future that our children will inherit when they leave our school system to do whatever they want to do with their lives. Then through a narrowing process, as this diagram depicts, we worked as teams at our small table groups to really define what we want our graduates of our system to have, what skills, what dispositions, what attitudes we want them to graduate with, so that they are ready to take on whatever they choose to do when they graduate. Now keep in mind that we have 2 school choice towns in our supervisory union. It is still important that our 8th graders are graduated with what it would be developmentally appropriate with these same competencies. In fact, our staff at Weathersfield, I know, have used the competencies as themes for this year as we rolled out the portrait to them last June. Next slide, please, Jackie. So now that we have this portrait, what do we do? So how do we get from portrait to the pathway that students will take and in our practice? And that started in January. We got the graphic that represents all 4 towns, north and south of the covered bridge in Windsor. and Manistutney, which can be seen from all 4 towns. And we then went into the strategic planning process, which started with a deep dive into the data. Our consultant, Battelle for Kids, took the data. I mean, and this was like newsletters and student attendance data and staff attendance data and programs of studies for all of our schools and all kinds of things, newsletters, etc., from the SU and from schools. And our consultant took a look at that and then brought us back some patterns and trends that he saw in the data. Our first meeting was going to be March 12th, and as many of you know, what was happening on March 12th, things started to shut down. We're very proud of the fact that we could get 20 or more members of our Portrait of a Graduate team to join us, and we had some new members as well, who joined us in May to start the strategic planning work, and we worked throughout the summer. And the first thing was to design the strategic framework. Our consultant brought us the framework, and then throughout July and into early August, a smaller subgroup of the portrait, of the strategic planning team met to look at what was suggested and brought to us, and then we would edit, we would revise, we would talk about what we wanted. It was very much a collaborative process. Next slide, please, Jackie. So this slide represents that process, and when we originally asked for strategic planning team members, many of our portrait members were looking at a spring sports season and thinking, well, I'm not going to be available, I'm going to have spring sports. So even though our strategic planning team was smaller, we feel confident that we got the voices of all 4 of our communities represented in those meetings. The final product that we decided on had 4 goal areas. That was student success, culture, student wellness and engagement, and information and communication. Next slide, please. In November, the board adopted the strategic plan, and I'm just going to give a brief overview of those 4 goal areas. Last week, the administrative team met to start determining how we are going to lead our system through this work. And I'm hoping that you see many of the objectives that have been identified for this work are things that we are already working on. What we did was we took the student wellness and engagement goal, and we divided it up so that we only have 3 teams, but that goal is still represented here in the work that we were doing. So goal number 1, WSESU will improve students' learning experiences because the personal, educational, vocational, and civic successes of our students are increasingly challenged in our rapidly changing world. Those strategies include developing a learning framework, which will provide the conditions and define what the conditions are for learning across the supervisory union, an assessment system that really supports student learning, and extended learning opportunities that allow students to have authentic and real-world learning experiences, and that's pre-K-12. Right now, extended learning opportunities is a concept that you see more at our high school level, but we are working hard to provide that pre-K-12. The second half of goal 1, we added in the student engagement piece. WSESU will, next slide please, Jackie, sorry. WSESU will further integrate the whole student into their education so that students increasingly see relevance, purpose, and connections between their learning experiences and their individual and collective lives. This slide is really about bringing our students into the process more than we've ever done before. Students' voice and choice, it's not about them without them, is saying that some of our people have been using in terms of developing wide opportunities for students to show their learning and demonstrate learning. Flexible Pathways, that's a program that you may associate with high school students, has been in place for many years. We started calling it Flexible Pathways more as a result of Act 173. But it is a way for students to show their learning in a variety of ways that are inside the school and outside the school. Student advisory boards will help us stay connected to what our students want in their education. Next slide, please. Culture and student wellness, goal area number 2 in that second half of goal 3. WSESU will strengthen and broaden the connections between and among all staff and the core work of education in pursuit of greater staff engagement, well-being, innovation, inclusion, and resolve. We're going to develop a portrait of a WSESU member. We have the competencies for our graduates. We want the competencies for all our WSESU staff. Collaborative practices. We firmly value collaboration and believe that we are better when we work together and include all voices. The Big Ideas Summit is going to be an annual event that encourages innovation amongst our staff and our community members so that we can stay current and future focused. And then diversity, that is looking at our curriculum, our policies, and as you know, we've been working on our racial equity policies this year. You should see that much of this work is related to work that's already happening. Next slide, please, Jackie. So the second part of that student wellness goal is represented here, and that's looking at leadership for our student mental health and social emotional learning. Our students, as you know, the pandemic we've been very concerned about our student and our staff's mental health and well-being, and this is work that we started even before the pandemic, and this work will continue with our strategic planning. Next slide, please. Our final slide is really about how we share the information about all the things that are happening in Windsor Southeast Supervisory Union in each of our schools. WSESU will improve the quality and effectiveness of its two-way communication so that stakeholder trust, understanding, and support will continue to advance the education of and opportunities for its students. We want to promote information and communications and data leadership. It says leader there as if that were a separate position, but really what it is looking at how we can use our current staffing and to improve our communication and information and our data leadership. Sorry about that. We want to make sure that we are being accountable for the work of the strategic plan. Our communities spoke, we listened, and now it's up to us to make sure that the work happens and that we stay focused on the strategic plan goals and objectives. That's the strategic plan progress monitoring. Student interest inventories is related very much to the extended learning opportunities, student voice and choice, and it's a data gathering opportunity for us. And then communications is really about how we spread the word, how we deliver information, and how we receive information from our students and families all the way up to our community members, our community leaders, and our broader supervisory union. The next slide, please. So if you want more information, you can find the strategic plan draft at this URL. And if you have any questions, you can email me at aladu@wsesu.net, and I'm happy to hear from you. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Angie. Very interesting presentation, and I hope the community got a chance to hear what we're up to, and I'm glad the community got a chance to hear what we're up to. Next slide, please. The Panther Pride welcomes new staff members. I'm not going to read all the names here, but we had a lot of new staff, and you can read those over. Next slide, Jackie. We would also like to thank staff who have recently moved on or retired from Weathersfield School. You can read those names there. Next slide, Jackie. And also, I think most of the community probably already knows this, but if you don't, Jean Marie Oakman is going to be retiring at the end of this school year after 40 years in education. Mimi Oakman, as she's come to be known by the students, makes every child in our school feel welcome and cared for. She'll be greatly missed, both for her warm, friendly nature as well as for her excellent leadership. We wish her well in her new position as full-time Mimi to her own grandchildren. And I guess this actually was written before we hired our new principal. But I hope that we did do as good a job hiring him as we did when we hired Jean Marie 11 years ago. Jean Marie, do you have anything you want to say?
Well, I've actually been an educator 44 years, so you can probably figure out that I am old enough to retire. I just want to say that I've had a fabulous career. It's been so much fun and really such a happy time for me. But my favorite school has been the Weathersfield School. You are sitting on a gold mine. It is fantastic. So I'm going to be around, but I'm really going to miss the school. The teachers are fantastic, the support staff, and of course my partner BJ Esty. She is an amazing human being. You are so lucky to have her. So I just want to say thank you. It's been some of the happiest times of my life. Thank you.
Well, thank you, Jean Marie. You're going to be greatly missed. Next slide, please. And this is our new principal who we just hired. I guess it was just a week or two ago now. His name is Brian Martez, and he comes to us all the way from Menifee, California. He and his family are making a huge change. I'm not going to read this whole slide, but if everybody wants to take a look at it. But we are very excited. He actually started a K-8 STEAM school. And he's been running that for the past 5 years. He has a lot of great ideas, and I think he's really going to be a fabulous addition to our school. So we're very excited to have him join us next year. Next slide. I guess now it's time to open it up to questions, so I'll hand it back over to John.
Thanks, Emery. There was one question that popped up in the chat, and I think we'll start there and then go to those folks who have raised their hands. Jean Marie, you said you would answer that one. Do you want to take that?
Yes, I'd be delighted to answer.
It's not us.
As you know, can you hear me okay?
Yeah.
Yep.
There is an echo, so.
Somebody, I don't know if that's you, John, or not. It might be you, John.
Okay, I'm not hearing it now, so I'll continue. As you know, I've been here 11 years, so I've prepared 11 different budgets for you, and there have always been 14 teachers, 14 classroom teachers. A couple of years, as you saw from an early enrollment chart, our numbers have gone up, not down. The rest of the nation seems to be going down, but not in Weathersfield. However, every year I look at adding a teacher because our numbers keep going up. And I will tell you, BJ and I started the budget process in September, and I said, you know, BJ, I think we're going to have to add that teacher this year because I'm going to need it in the primary. And I've got right now on the books, I've got 33 kids coming in kindergarten. That is a huge class. So obviously, I absolutely cannot cut any kindergarten teachers. And then if you look at my current kindergarten, I certainly cannot cut any first grade. Well, I thought about adding a teacher. That would be about an average of, with benefits, about 65, 70,000. Well, it didn't take me long to figure out that we could not afford it. Our budget last year was less than this budget, and we passed by 8 votes. I'm a realist, and my background is school finance. So I knew that if I put in a 15th classroom teacher, that it would, and you can see now by our budget being up 10.11%, it just would have pushed it over. So sadly, I already know that I have to have 1 primary classroom with only 1 teacher. And it could be, Michelle Pinder's question was, Is it second grade? And I think I know why she's asking that question. Right now, Michelle, that decision has not been made. It will either be second or it will be third grade. And there's many factors we're looking at. We're looking at, number one, numbers of kids. Number two, the needs of the students. That includes kids who are on 504 plans, IEPs, or what we call MTS SRTs. So it could be second grade, it could be third grade. I don't want to alarm you, but if the budget goes down, I don't have enough pencils and paper and equipment in my school budget to cut that. So if the budget were to go down, really the only thing I could cut would be a teacher. I don't want to do that. I am very hopeful this budget passes, but I just want to be honest with you. If the budget should not pass, then it's possible there'll be 2 primary classrooms with only 1 teacher.
Okay, thanks, Jean Marie. There was another question that came in through the chat, just I think it can be answered without, we can deal with it. Jackie, can you put up the question to put up the slide with the projected enrollment? We're there already. And then, BJ, do we have a list of folks who have raised their hands?
Yes.
I think it's Olivia Savage, which I think is John Arison, and Susan Tyrell. And I'm not sure if that's both John or not. There seems to be some feedback when he comes on.
Agreed.
Yeah. And John, before...
Hold it.
Hold on just one second.
If you could repeat the question for the record, because I'm not seeing on the slide.
DeForest, I think that the feedback's coming from your iPad.
It was then, it's not now.
Okay.
Yeah, no, I was gonna suggest that same thing, and the other thing I wanted to do is, maybe just quickly before we take questions, go back to slide 18. I mean, I just wanna be clear, Ann, you did a great job on presenting, but I wanna be completely transparent, because it could have been implied that the SU budget went down. It did not go down. The SU budget, the assessments, went up. What
Just
went
our
down
portion, the Weathersfield portion of it.
Right, the Weathersfield portion of the SU assessment went down, and when you look at it, it's because we took the $243,000 out of the local budget, put it into the SU budget. So the difference there, if you subtracted that out of that increase, you actually, if we hadn't done that, your assessment would have gone down by between $7,000 and $8,000. So I think that's what. And again, Ann, you did a great job. I just wanted to clarify that. Now we can just go to question and answers, John, as people want to do that.
Got it. Sounds good. We'll go from there. I'll just go through them as I see them pop up in the chat. Susan Hindiger asks, can you show the enrollment next year versus this year, please? And Susan, if you have additional questions, you can either raise your hand and we can get you, or type them into the chat.
I think they're referring to the slide that shows the number of teachers. And by the way, when you see teacher names, they're there. Thank you. Those are simply placeholders. The teachers do get their assignments in the spring, but obviously we have to wait to see if the budget passes, if we need to cut a position. All of those things have to be considered.
Yeah, we were getting
Next
liquid
question
feedback.
that's in the chat is from Roxanne Blake. What percent is enrollment going up compared to cost increases?
Just turn it on, see if we're getting feedback.
School board, take that one.
David, do you?
Yeah, I can take that. The truth is that enrollment in Weathersfield, unlike most schools in the state of Vermont, has stayed pretty level.
You gotta turn
It's not a
yours
percentage up,
all
it's
the way
not
down.
A percentage
And keep your microphone
down.
off.
It's pretty much.
And what I'll do is I'll turn
much,
this speaker on and everybody else to speak.
And I'm
through
talking
those
about the
speakers.
K-8 enrollment.
So just
now.
don't
It's stayed
unmute
pretty
yourself.
steady in the 230.
Turn your volume all the way down.
241 range. What is going up is the high school enrollment, right? And that's the slide we.
I can't hear it.
a net of about 12 new high school
If
students.
anybody wants to talk, she'll unmute
And that's
her.
the part that's
And then you can
going
speak,
up. But
and
the
then once she's
K-8
done, when you're
enrollment
done,
is
she'll
staying pretty much
Right there,
even.
right where you are.
And quite frankly, the K-8 budget, if you take out the tuition, the K-8 budget has stayed just about even. But again, you have to pay for those high school students. So that's the bottom line.
Okay, thank you. John Harrison, I see you have your hand raised.
Olivia.
Yeah, the first thing I'd like to ask is, I'd like to ask everybody to give a big round of applause to Jean Marie. Now I'll ask the tough part. The enrollment numbers, still getting the feedback.
Just push it down, volume down.
On page 25 and 49 don't jive. One shows 7 down and one shows. Yeah, we gotta. I can't talk if that's off.
Can't.
I think there's some feedback issues at the town, John, or
Can
Turn that down.
a question into the chat and remute yourselves, we will get that question answered.
John,
Never mind.
turn down your volume. On your device you're using, John, turn off the volume.
Yeah, just mute the volume, John. You should be able to hear. Want to try again?
Still have a question? You keep your hand up.
Put your hand up, John.
If not,
Put your hand up. Put your hand up. He's asking you to put your hand up if you have a question. Yep, just, we're trying to straighten it out.
Still getting feedback? No, not as much.
That's bad.
What my question is, on page 25 of the town report versus page 49, the enrollment numbers don't jive. You're showing an increase of 49 students next year. And on page 49, it shows a reduction of 7. And that's backing out the current enrollment, which isn't in there. It just doesn't, the two numbers don't jive. I was wondering which one is, I realize it's projected, but they don't seem, yeah.
I can address that, John, does for the K-8. So if I actually have a paper I wish I had on the slide that I could show you, that it's current enrollment and projected. What's happened, John, is not every student is in person. So right now, we have a population of in person, and then we have a population of remote, and a population of homestead. We have to plan for all of those students returning. So our current population, so it's possible that what's in the town report for K-8 those were numbers that were based on the population on November 2nd. Because on November 2nd, I sent a memorandum to the board where we actually looked at state law 2121.2 of school quality standards, which talks about teacher-student ratio, because we wanted to make sure we weren't in violation of state law by not adding that 15th teacher. So I did that memorandum, and at that time it was based on the numbers of students we had in all 3 of those categories, in-person, remote, and home study. Well, I had to update it on the 19th of January because we had students move in. So the board received a memorandum from me dated January 19th, and that shows, and that's the enrollment you're looking at right now. The only thing different on the slide you're looking at is that I have a column called current enrollment. And those are the kids in school now. And it's a smaller number. But once COVID is over, once we all have our vaccine, we have to plan for all students returning. And that number of students, which equals 238, and that is not the out-of-placement students. So there's another set of figures that show us at 241. And so there's many variables that are considered in this. And we actually took out the students that attend school out of district because we thought that would be confusing. So I'm thinking that's the difference, but I would encourage David or Ed or BJ, if I've missed this in any way, you let me know.
Thank you. From my perspective, that was very helpful.
Thanks. We're gonna go next in the chat. Julie Levy asked the question, can you guess at what the monetary advantage of committing to 3 high schools would be? Would you still pay the state average for all other schools?
Yeah, I can actually take that. I did, just for fun, because math's fun. I did work out what we would save if we designated Windsor, Springfield, and Woodstock as our 3 schools. They're all currently charging somewhere in the neighborhood of $18,500 per year per student. I think a reasonable negotiated figure might be $18,000. We might even get lower than that with negotiating with them, but let's go with $18,000. Currently, we are budgeting for almost $20,000 per student, and we have over 100 students. So that would be a savings of $2,000 times 100, which is $200,000. We would still pay, if students chose to go elsewhere, we would still pay that $18,000, and then they would pay the remainder. If they go to a private school, I believe that would still be set at the $16,000, and they would pay the remainder.
I noticed that, I think Susan Hindiger, John, sorry to interrupt, but I want to piggyback on what Anne Marie said. I want to make sure everybody understands designation, right? Designation is someplace between full high school choice and joining another district so you don't have any choice. The state used to only allow 1 designation, sometimes 2, but now they're up to 3.
They charge special ed on top.
Here's the point to that.
Baker said that some of the schools are charging like 10 grand if the kids are on an IEP. So they're average.
They may not agree to be designated, they have to agree to that. And secondly, it takes a vote of your town to designate to those high schools. The school board can't just do that arbitrarily, you would have to do that. And then what would happen is you would pay the negotiated rate, and you do some of that up front with any towns you were thinking about. And then you would also then be able to hold that tuition line, depending on what you negotiated. And then, as Anne Marie said, parents would pay the difference. Keep in mind, though, that those students who are still going to private schools, like you've got a fair number of students at the Compass School. That's a private school, and it only gets the state. It just gets the state average. And as a matter of fact, I think their tuition might even be a little bit lower than the state average. So there would be some private schools that would still be able to go to full tuition value because you'd still be paying that state average to that private school. There are some private schools that are exempted from the state average. Those would be schools like Thetford, Burton, St. John's Free Academy. But again, I don't think anybody on this board today is, it is an option, and it will take a lot of community dialogue to think about it. I think it's just that this board is worried should this budget go down, that excess cost and tuition of upwards to $400,000 would have to come out of the K-8 budget if we were to cut significantly. So that I think that's the point, and I think Susan wanted to make a comment, Susan Hindiger, about designation as well.
Correct. Go ahead, Susan.
Thank you. I did some calculations this morning using the data in the town report, and I looked at the 21.54 equalized increase for high school students, and I used the tuition figures that are on page 25 of the town report. If we limited our school choice to just Windsor, just for the sake of argument. Their tuition is $18,245, and if all of our high school students went to Windsor, we would save $19,000 off a almost $1.9 million tuition bill. if we said, okay, Windsor and Springfield, and 61 families would lose their first choice, because 61 families do not choose Windsor. If we restricted choice to Windsor and Springfield, it would cost $3,720 more than we're already paying. Because some of the private school tuitions are significantly lower than some of the public school, than all of the public school tuitions. So there's not an automatic savings. And if, as was suggested, we limited our choice to Windsor, Springfield, and Woodstock, and negotiated the average tuition, their average tuition of those three schools next year is $18,636. And all of our students went to one of those three schools and paid that average tuition, it would cost Weathersfield $20,000 more than we have in our budget. So it's a false equivalency. I am very skeptical that somehow these schools would negotiate their per student tuition down from what it costs them to educate our kids. I think that what we're saying is, for some reason, our students in Weathersfield who are at high school age somehow are less deserving of education than our K through 8 students. It is frustrating that the only budget lever we have to move is by adjusting our K through 8 budget, for sure. But when we have more increasing enrollment in K through 8, we don't have that same level of outrage that we seem to have by an increasing level of high school enrollment. My question, so I'm just hoping that that data will provide, will be helpful when people are thinking about the question of reducing choice. My question is related to page 34 of the budget. We're talking about increased enrollment at K through 8 and increased high school enrollment, but our equalized pupil number went down this year from 321 to 311. And so question number one is, why is that? I know there's a complex formula for calculating equalized pupils. And number two, related to that, I remember this time last year talking about the error that was made in the poverty rate for the town negatively affecting our budget because our poverty rate was significantly lower. And I wonder if this lowering in equalized pupil number is an artifact of that mistake and whether that was rectified this year. Thank you.
I'd like to just start, but then I'll pass it over to Ed. Well, actually, maybe a little bit of David too. I'm a little confused by Susan's figuring. I think you definitely would see a savings if you're negotiating with schools. You wouldn't be paying the same rate as everyone else. If you agreed to send the vast majority of your students to certain schools and you're negotiating, I don't know why we would negotiate to pay Windsor more than they're already asking. We definitely wouldn't do that. I disagree with her figuring there, respectfully. I don't think it's out of line to think that we would save, if we were to negotiate with those schools, $500 per student off of what they're asking, just generally from everyone else. And the numbers just kind of speak for themselves if you do the math in a simpler way. Susan was getting into a bunch of other stuff that I don't think really applies, or at least not, I'm not sure. So we would have, but these are all things that would have to be discussed later. Like I said, this has nothing to do really with this time's budget. There's nothing we can do about paying these fees this year. We have to pay them. It's as a community agreed upon for our high school students, and unless we do this by Australian ballot, it's going to take a long time. We probably would have to grandfather in current students. I don't know if we could change what current students are doing. So this is all something to talk about for the future. Has nothing to do with this year's budget, except for that the high school tuition is what caused our increase this year. And we're just hoping that the voters will see that and that they won't vote our budget down and cause us to have to cut from the K through 8 students. She did mention about K through 8 and having more students come into K through 8. That's easily absorbed at our school. We have a very nice modern building, and more K through 8 students don't cost us a dime really. But when students of high school age move into our town, they cost us $20,000 at least per student. Ed, do you want to answer her other question regarding equalized pupil number?
The poverty number was corrected, so that's not a factor. And the second part is that the overall poverty rate in Weathersfield has been declining over the last couple of years for multiple reasons. So putting that in place with the actual that we're getting from Power School, which is what the state uses for CLA, not stuff that's on page 25. It's on page, what I put on page 33 is what Power School says, and that's the data that was used by the state. Now, I can't speak to the formula and how it was calculated using poverty rate, free and reduced lunch, and all of those other things. But I can tell you that the poverty rate in Weathersfield has been declining over the last 3 or 4 years, and that the numbers are calculated based on the Power School counts.
Yeah, let me just add to that, John, quickly. This is David. Because Susan, I think you asked an excellent question, and I really appreciate the fact that John Harrison came in to meet about equalized pupil too, because the legislature is looking at equalized pupil, and I think he said that in his report, that they understand that there are some fundamental flaws in equalized pupil, and they're trying to correct that. Much more expensive to educate a child in a rural town, in a rural area, than it is in a more suburban area, and they're going to rectify some of that. We're going to see some relief over the next couple of years. But Susan, your question, when you get those 12 to 16 new high school students, let's say over the summer, and they go into your totals, what happens with equalized pupil is it's a 3-year rolling average, and it's capped on both ends by about 3%. So you're never going to see all those kids in that equalized pupil. And I think what's happened is we've had some minor decreases in the last couple of years, and then some major increases. This year is a real bubble year in terms of that high school population. I mean, we went from 92 projected, or whatever that was projected, to 102 kids. And I'll tell you, BJ has looked at that so closely each and every other way. And at least 12 of those high school kids, we did not know them. They did not come through our K-8 system. So that means, not surprisingly, families are moving to this area. I think COVID has driven some of that. I think the beauty of living in a small town attracts people, and they bring their children with them. Brian Marquez, the new principal candidate, will bring 2 kids with him. One of those kids was going to high school. I don't know if he'll move to Weathersfield, but he wants to move to one of our towns in this supervisory union because they see the safety in living in a small town and the community that drives small towns. And people are attracted to that. And they get more attracted
another chair.
to that. So it's a blip this year, but I bet you it's a blip that we're going to see for the next several years.
Mine's off.
But I really think it's more about the town having a good, healthy conversation about this. And I know that this town and Heartland support school choice. There are very smart people in the town with school choice. It's a very attractive option for parents. And I think it's just a matter of understanding that sometimes in some years it costs more because you have kids move into the high school, and other times it might cost a little bit less. But I think we just have to keep our eye on that ball.
I have something to add. I have something to add.
They had all kinds of trouble with it.
Oh, okay. I'm glad I'm not
A couple nights ago.
I just wanted to add that I'm in no way advocating for getting rid of school choice. I love school choice. My son uses school choice, and I I'm in no way advocating for getting rid of school choice. We're advocating for maybe putting some limits on school choice.
Mine's off, so how do you do
Students
that?
would
I
still
don't
be
want
able to
speed
pick
bumps.
whatever school they want. Just their parents might have to pay a bit if they choose a school that's higher than our negotiated rate. And that's all.
It's Jean Marie. I did want to mention in my tenure, or one time our poverty rate was 58%, the highest in the supervisory union, which entitled us to a lot of CFP, Consolidated Federal Program, grant money, Title I and Title II, and those days are gone. We only have a 30% poverty rate. Ed's right, that has gone down steadily. Kristen Brusso wrote something in the chat I just want to speak to, and it is true that we do pay high school tuition, and there are some schools that do charge an additional charge for students on IEPs, and that's not true in Windsor, and I think that's the point she's making, because we already pay special ed through the SU assessment. So I just wanted to mention those two things.
Thank you. And I wanted to go back to a question that popped up in the chat from Nate McNaughton. I'm curious what percent of the town will actually see the increases in their tax rate due to income sensitivity? Does David or Ed, can you answer that?
Yeah, John, I can take that, and Ed, you can back me up here. We usually get a sheet that indicates, the exact percentage. We haven't gotten that yet. I don't know whether, Ed, if we have gotten it, and you can speak more clearly to this, go ahead. I know it's always been in the high 60s, and I think that, 67%, 70% of the town gets some form of income sensitivity. So that's why I agree with Anne Marie. If your income is, that's household income, is under that $130-some thousand, I think you do this anyhow by product of filling out your income taxes, but just make sure you fill out that I think it's H111 form or whatever it is that qualifies you for that payment and that rebate, because it's going to help you out tremendously.
Nate, you have your hand raised. Do you have an additional follow-up question on that topic?
No, I just had the comment that if 70% of our town doesn't actually pay that increase, I think that's a really important thing when we're thinking about budget approach to make sure is loud and clear. Those numbers, those increases are only about how people make decisions on the budget.
Exactly.
Because I know, fixed income, it's very different. It's a very minimal impact. And so I think that would be an important thing to understand, I think, for the town as we look at supporting our kids in both our high school and our elementary kids.
This is just a real quick follow-up reminder. If you ask a question, raise your hand. If you're done speaking and don't have a question again, can you lower your hand? So we don't want to come back to you.
My hands up.
Does town have anything raised?
Yeah, I do.
John, is that John Harrison?
John, did you?
Dave, do you want to ask a question?
Yeah.
Go ahead. Actually, Dave Fuller's the one that wants to ask a question. He's more technologically challenged than I am.
Oh, the microphone's on.
Attempting to speak, but
Can you?
If you don't have a question, John Harrison, can you lower the hands, hit the hand button again, so lower your hand? Thank you.
Yeah. Dave Fuller's the one that wants to ask the question. He's more technologically challenged than I am.
Go ahead. You're on, Dave.
Go ahead.
We'll get there.
Mute your microphone, John. And
The
unmute this microphone.
The microphone's on.
Go ahead.
Go ahead.
Okay, we're live. I'd like to ask if I see the enrollment and the numbers, and is there any way that the state aid, or either at the state level, I know that's a little hard to predict right now, or the federal, or the chapter funding, is that a little unclear, and can that make up the difference with the projected enrollment increase or not? Is that just a guessing game? Because I think the key to this would be, for any voter, would be is it the amount to be raised by taxes, or is there another source of revenue that will offset the per-child aid, so to speak, as a package? I appreciate, and I did follow the math that Susan Hittinger did, and I'm agreeing with her, but she raised the issue about the poverty mistake, and as I recall, last year, what happened was the board made a commitment to fully fund the chapter position that was lost because of that. So the question is, did that get recovered somehow? So will there be more aid from another source other than property taxes?
Somebody turn up your microphone.
Okay, off with the mic.
Olivia. Turn it up.
Okay. Everything work? We've got a, Mr. Baker.
Formally and legally mute Dave Fuller. So
Yeah.
I just did that.
Yep.
But anyhow,
Good.
here's the bottom line. I think Ed tried to explain that, Dave, that we did fix the poverty error, so that's not translated here.
The problem you've got in Weathersfield is that your poverty factor or your poverty figures, and I think in some ways, this is relatively good news. It's not good news financially. Is coming down. As Gene said, you used to be up around 50%, and now you are literally down around 33%, or in the low 30s. So actually, as people come up and buy houses, as the community continues to, and I know it doesn't look it in the middle of COVID, but continues to do well, you don't have the kind of poverty you had, let's say 5 years ago or 6 years ago. So unfortunately, all those chapter monies, those federal monies, we can share a little bit of that, but it's really hard when your poverty factor is that low.
So David, can I just say, one of the things that has to be clear here is that you're voting on the budget, the general fund budget. Are there going to be other sources for FY20, the FY22 budget that we're voting on, or that you're voting on, that would affect this year? No, there aren't. There are not. The monies that we're looking at are coming from, we've already factored in some monies from the COVID relief funds that came in back in March of last year. So where you'd see a result in that is if there was a surplus in this current year because of some of those costs being offset. But the federal grants that you're talking about, David, are grants that are used for additional services, okay? So those additional services can't be stopped. We can't just simply take a position out of the general fund and move it over to one of the title grants or something else like that, because that would be considered supplanting, and there are some pretty severe penalties for doing that. So when they put together the CFP budget, or the Consolidated Federal Program, which is the budget, which is the one that is related to the poverty rate, those are services that are going to be used to help those students that are in that range. So they can't be, it's in addition to what you're normally paying. So how they calculate the eligibility, that's a whole nother factor that Angie Ledoux does. The fact of the matter is that none of that money helps the general fund. It's all in addition.
Okay. And Jean Marie, if you wanted to comment on what you put in the chat there.
Dave Fuller was correct, and we did have a Title I math teacher that was paid for through title funds. You have to have a poverty rate of 40% or higher, and in fact, our other two of our 3 schools, or 4 schools, I believe, meet that criteria. So I will say I'm very proud of our school board, had the foresight last year when they were building the budget to put in for that math teacher at the local level, because we knew the poverty rate kept going lower and lower, and we recognized the need for support for students in math. Now, the reading teacher that we have, our literacy expert, she was put in the budget a couple of years ago when the poverty rate started to go low, and we couldn't support both positions through federal funds. So we were disappointed when we lost the math, but we were proactive, put it in the local budget. And I will tell you, those are two services that must remain in the local K-8 budget. They are absolutely essential to the support of young learners.
Okay. BJ, have you captured any other raised hands that I missed?
Nope, I think you're good, John.
Okay. Is there any other discussion on Article 4? Okay. Let's move on to Article 5 then. To transact any other business which may properly come before the meeting. That is pretty straightforward. So at this point, unless there's any other discussion, entertain a motion to adjourn.
John, this is BJ Yesti, and I will also make that motion to adjourn.
And this is Alicia Jenks, and I second.
Great. Motion made and seconded. All those in favor, signify by saying aye.
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 Or thumbs up.
However it works for you. Opposed? Motion carries. All right. Thanks, everybody. Let's hope we do this in person next year.
Thank you all for your support.
Town meeting is this afternoon.
12:30, I believe.
In the case that
Yeah,
it wasn't such.
Giant one. What? How about a
So we just go to the Zoom webpage to get on this thing, right?
I'm just gonna tell everybody, when the SAPA comes back on and everything, can we all remember, because there's a lot of people in here, and I don't wanna hear about it office structure, meaning the town clerk's office or about solid waste. And Brandon's gonna do the general fund.
So does this mean I'm in?
Huh?
Oh, I think
So
I'm
we
in.
can go home.
You see me there?
We just said,
I'm not even in yet.
we just
Oh,
said.
my camera.
when you mentioned to me, we heard it on the, I think all these little wires and everything, I think it
said, no, any select board member can open the meeting, and then they appoint one of.
To allow me, as the chair, to moderate the meeting, the annual town meeting in 2021, in the absence of the regular elected moderator. Any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
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 Thank you. Brandon, or do we have people that are logged on now, or I'd like to organize so that we don't leave anybody out before I start the meeting, or we can take a minute or two to make sure that everybody hears us, that our system is working. Maybe we should test it. If we see somebody on, I'd like to ask if they can hear us. Do you see anybody on, Brandon, that has a name?
I would like to note that the senator is on the call.
Senator.
And I can hear you.
Nice. Allison Clarkson. Okay, is on. Nice. Now, let me read into the record exactly why I'm the moderator. The board prepared, the board prepared for some of these strange happenings this year, COVID-19, and we did get an email from John Broker Campbell, who is the duly elected moderator of the town and school meeting, and he had messaged me that he was getting his second COVID shot yesterday, which was Friday. There have been a history of side effects the day after the second shots, and we wanted to be prepared. So I got this email this morning from John at 8:14, and I'd just like to read it in the record, and that's why we're at where we're at. And he said, well, the post-COVID-19 vaccine symptoms have begun mildly. Based on the current trajectory of flu-like symptoms, I'm planning to moderate the school meeting from home, and I am hoping that Dave Fuller will be willing to moderate the town meeting. Does this make sense? I apologize. I had no control over when I got the vaccine, and the second dose must be administered in a small window of time. Let me know if there are any questions. I emailed him back at 8:30, and I said, yes, John, that would be great, hope you're okay, and connect to the link for the town meeting as well, if you would like, at 12:30 p.m. So the board just granted me authority to moderate the meeting. So let me first introduce people that are here. Yeah, I'll call the meeting. I think I opened that.
I don't know what just happened. Hey, Brandon.
Internet signal or zero.
How did that happen?
I didn't touch anything and then this happened, so. And I thought McCormick was online too. Do I?
Senator McCormick is online. Okay, good.
Yeah.
Are we back yet or no?
It looks like we're back.
Are we back online? Anybody?
Yes.
Okay.
We're all set.
Let me continue then. You didn't miss anything, because if we have an interruption in a signal, that we're going to pause and we're going to do the best we can under the conditions. We're going to try to do.
They cannot hear you. They can't hear you.
They can't.
Hold on a second. Oh.
Now we've got audio.
No.
Yes.
Yes to audio. Can everybody hear me? If you could wave. Okay. Okay, we're waving. All right. What I said was, prior to the audio disruption, I said if we have a problem, we're going to pause. We're going to get through this meeting the best we can. I'd like to introduce and as I go around and make introductions. Now before I do that, because I didn't know that I was going to do this, and I just see the name pop up. When I first moved here in 1977. A man was the moderator who I admire. We rented his cornfields right here on the side with the Jarvis family as well. His name was Melvin Red Butterfield. And I put this suit on today because that's what he did. And then he'd go like this. I call this meeting to order of the 2021 town meeting of Weathersfield. And in his honor, that's why I have this suit on. So I'd like to introduce our town manager, Brandon Gulnick. If everybody could just stick their hand up and wave, then everybody can see. I'm not sure whether the TV goes around the room. We have Paul Tillman, a board member, select board member of the town. Michael Todd, board member. Olivia Savage, who works in the office. We have Joey Jarvis, a board member. Suzanne Terrell in the office. We have DeForest Pierce, who's a secretary, a recording secretary, and we have the town clerk, Flo Ann. I left out one on purpose, John Arison, because I'm gonna get to him in a second. But because I've been the emergency management director as well through this whole experience. We are 6 feet apart, and we're all going to remain masked up. We're going to obey the governor's orders. I left out one important girl on the end who's finance, Rosalie McNamara, I'm sorry. Chauncey Tillman as well, and then Brandon's wife in the corner, Natalia. We're trying to do the best we can. At this moment, I would like to introduce John Arison, who's been, do we have a screen up, Brandon? Or, I know it, you showed me that before. Or Olivia. Okay, nice.
Hold on 1 second.
All right.
I need to come over there.
We're all set? Gonna make it a little bit bigger, or? We gotta keep moving forward. Is that's okay. as you can read along with me, John has served the Weathersfield Select Board for 16 years and has recently been elected to the Vermont House of Representatives to serve the towns of Weathersfield and Cavendish. John is a member of the Committee on Education. You can read along, and he's been a friend and a valued member of this board. I think he'll continue to be able to research and do information and share it back with us and the school board of our towns. And I'd like to present him with what I think the ultimate piece of Weathersfield, which is a plaque, hand carved, and a gift certificate for his service. So thank you, John, and I know we can't shake hands, but
Thank you very much, Dave.
thank you so much.
It's really terrific, because Dave and I did not rehearse this, but I put on a suit also. And the reason I did was, first year I served on the select board and at a town meeting, I had a suit on, and Red Butterfield was the moderator. And we didn't rehearse this. And I felt that it was appropriate that my last select board meeting, I wore a suit. Thank you.
Yes.
Thanks, John.
There's also another order of business that I'd like to take up at this time before we get on with the budgets. If people have their town reports and turn to page 4, we have the Weathersfield Service Award, which has been given to individuals both in the school and the town over the years for their valued service to the town. And this year, the Town Service Award goes to the 1879 Schoolhouse Committee to restore the building that is on the National Historical Register. And it used to be part of the building, and you can see the associated pictures here on the screen. The original committee members were Karen McGee, DeForest Bierce, Allison Roth, Matt Keniston, and B.J. Esty. And it now includes Beverly Strobel and Dottie Richardson. I want to thank each and every one of those people, especially Matt Keniston. And you see a group of volunteers in the middle picture that have done so much hard work and given their time and efforts for this project. They did remove the long handicapped ramp access and put in a brand new one, which makes the building look much more complete. Keep it on that screen, okay? Somebody's running the... Yep. Next, is it? The town has just recently received an additional grant award for that building to repair the belfry on the roof. Do we have a picture of the 1879 again? Just keep going back. Yeah, there you go. So at this time, we do have another plaque that will be given to the committee, and we also have, it'll be inscribed and be able to put up in the 1879 building of the same plaque and the seal of the town of Weathersfield hand carved. So I'd like to thank each and every one of them. I know this virtual meeting is extremely hard, and I'm absolutely sure that we'd have a standing ovation and a bunch of applause for all this hard work. Is that it, John? Or?
Yeah.
Okay, good. One added note before I read the articles. I want to take a moment to thank 3 individuals who represent the younger generation of public service to our town. They bring new ideas and are the future. Each of them live here, they work here, and they contribute to the town in different ways. Joey Jarvis sits right over here, and his family's got a long-standing service to the town in a variety of ways. My own daughter, Kristen Brusso, is on the school board right now, and for me, most notably, was Michael Spalding, who I had the honor of presenting an award this summer for outstanding conduct at an emergency scene. let's all encourage our younger generation to become involved in our future together. Now, if we can turn to page,
Hey, run this.
what do I have to do?
Brandon, run the Leahy piece.
Okay. Just give me a moment here, we're gonna. Is that gonna be like a sound? Okay.
Yeah, it's better be.
Okay. Do we have to click on a link, Brandon, or how does this? We're just filling the gap here of air. I'm sorry for the delay.
It should be, it's fine, Brandon.
Do we have a little volume, or?
I know this is going well.
No, it just ended, or is it just gonna reload, or how is this gonna work?
Can I have the mouse?
I'm sure it'll come on when I keep talking. Ready?
This is Senator Patrick Leahy. I just want to thank the Vermont Symphony Orchestra for inviting me to take part in this celebration. It's our town meeting tradition. It also celebrates the 230th anniversary of Vermont's statehood. It's an honor to not only recite the lyrics of our state song for you, but to introduce the VSO's virtual performance. I want to say thank you to the VSO musicians. You brought this music into our lives. And thank you to the town and city clerks throughout Vermont. Thanks to all of you who are listening today and taking part in our most important democratic process. Marcel and I wish you the very best. These green mountains, these green hills and silver waters are my home. They belong to me. To all of our sons and daughters, may they be strong and forever free. Let us live to protect her beauty and look with pride in the Golden Dome. They say home is where the heart is. These green mountains are my home. These green mountains are my home. Can't hear anything. Can't hear anything.
Well, that went well.
Escape.
Is it still absent? Somebody's trying to speak, but
Escape.
Oh, escape.
you wanna,
We heard nothing of that.
okay, they didn't hear anything.
Right.
Okay,
Forget it.
yep, we gotta, it was, okay, let me fill, can you hear us now? If you can, just wave. Oh, now we got a empty screen. This isn't going so well.
They can hear you.
Okay, they can hear now. Let's, so I,
Just go do the business.
Yeah, we gotta go to the business. Let's just stop that and go back to our regular, just a screen, and you gotta push end so it doesn't just interrupt me again then. Can everybody hear me now? If you can wave. Anybody's on the screen can wave? Okay, good. All right. Let me ask this. So they did something at the school meeting. Are there any brief comments? I saw a couple of our state senators. I thought I saw Allison Clarkson and Dick McCormick, and I don't know if I saw Alice Nitka or not. But is there any one of you first that would like to give us an update on the things that are happening in Montpelier? That might be helpful. Can you take down that? Can you just have a regular screen of the faces, please? So is it Dick or Alice or Alice Nitka? Anybody on there like to go first?
Dick?
Yep.
Are you there? Why don't you go first?
Yeah.
Yep.
Okay. I'm on. Can I be heard?
Yes. Go ahead.
Can you hear me?
Yep. We've got you.
Can you see me? I cannot see
Yep.
myself. Okay. All right. We're obviously COVID remains the big issue, but of course not the only issue. And we have the light at the end of the tunnel. Back about a year ago now, we gave emergency powers to the executive branch, so as to be able to move with quickly and to be nimble. I think that I want to just first of all say I think the governor and his people have done an admirable job, and I think that we did the right thing in tending to defer to them. If on occasion they'd made decisions that I perhaps would have decided something different, I never saw that it was so bad as to justify interfering. We have to, in an emergency, you got to let people do their work. We are hearing some I'm getting angry emails about people think they have a God-given constitutional right to, as they put it, make their own health decisions, which of course they do. But if you choose, for example, to not wear a mask, you're making a health decision for other people as well. And that is not a right. There's no particular right to infect other people or to risk infecting other people. We have a public health crisis, and public health hygiene is a legitimate demand to be made by the governor and his people. We divide into committees, as I think probably everyone knows. I serve on the Natural Resources and Energy Committee. And right now, what we have been concentrating on, really for the whole station, and weatherization is part of a larger package of energy conservation. The real big villain in energy waste is transportation. And we are also looking at, I'm sorry, did I hear someone?
No, that's okay. Keep going. Thanks.
Okay, thanks. We are looking for ways to expedite people getting into EVs, electric vehicles. A lot of people think that doing something serious about global warming is going to cost more money than we can afford, and in particular will cost low-income people. But actually, if someone gets into an electric vehicle, in the end, they're going to save money. It's the old adage that money makes money. It's front-loaded. It's expensive to get into an EV in the first place, but less expensive as time goes on, and we're looking at ways to help expedite that front-loaded expense. But the main thing that we're focused on right now is weatherization. And again, weatherization is not a sacrifice. If we had to sacrifice to do something about global warming, we should. But in fact, we don't. This is not a sacrifice. It saves money and makes life better if you've weatherized. But it is front-loaded. It's expensive to get in the first place. So what we've been looking at are the economics of weatherization. In the afternoon, I serve on the institutions committee. That is, we do the capital bill. That is the long-term investment. Most people as individuals try to pay their ongoing expenses with current income rather than you don't want to go into debt for your groceries, for example. But most people, at one time or another, have borrowed money for a car or a house. So too, the state borrows money for long-term capital investment. We have been, over the last several years, reducing our capital debt, and we continue to do that. This is a town meeting. I don't want to take up too much time. So I'll hand it over to Allison.
Good afternoon. Thank you for letting us speak. I was just expecting to listen. So it's a pleasure to be in Weathersfield virtually. And this is one of the silver linings, I think, that we were able to be in Andover earlier this morning, and without driving 45 minutes, we're in Weathersfield. It's great. I'm Allison Clarkson. I'm one of your 3 state senators. Dick and Alice Nitka and I serve you. I serve as Vice Chair of Senate Economic Development, and as in the afternoon on Senate Government Operations. And I would say that we are really focusing this session on building back better together. And I would say that's a tripartisan effort. We're working really hard to do all the things you would hope that we would do, making a silver purse out of a sow's ear of COVID. And we are expanding we're in the process of extending COVID measures that we put in place last year so that protections for Vermonters won't end before the pandemic, COVID eligibility for unemployment insurance and workers' compensation, and extending telemedicine opportunities. We're incorporating the lessons learned by the pandemic into legislation like mail-out ballots, which we just voted out of Senate Government Operations, and continuing and actually enabling telemedicine opportunities into the future. And we're working to leverage precious federal dollars into lasting improvements in Vermont life, building affordable housing, housing the homeless. We were able to do that. 2,500 homeless families and individuals have been housed during the course of this pandemic, and we've been able to build just under 300 permanent homes for them, which is just great. Or building out high-speed internet. I'd say, without going into detail, the big issues you probably have read that we're addressing in addition to COVID, we're also, as you know, expecting almost $1 billion now from the feds if the Senate passes this COVID relief bill. We'll be working hard to appropriate that money and getting it into the areas, schools, states, municipalities. It says money for municipalities, which is great, and healthcare. And businesses and individuals and low-income families. It's a little more targeted, and it's going to be hugely important for the 20,000 people that are still on unemployment insurance. But the big issues, as you know, we're working on the unfunded pensions. We're dealing with an unfunded challenge of $4.5 billion between teachers and state employee retirement, and we want to solve this so that so that we honor our bond and commitments, and we also have to make it sustainable into the future. The Vermont State Colleges, we are looking at having to do financing for them of $80 million this year, but they are looking at creative ways to make themselves sustainable into the future. Expanding broadband through these communication union districts like EC Fiber, state aid to school construction. We're looking at how do we solve this problem. We've built up over $600 million in need. So we're looking at a study to figure out how we can do that and how we can sustainably fund our 30% construction commitments that we had made before the recession, and then stop contributing to school construction. We're looking at how UI insurance and the trust fund into the future can be sustainable, and how we can balance employers' tax with benefits for individuals. We're going to be weighing the Tax Structure Commission recommendations, which move to an income tax instead of a property state education tax, and reduces sales tax and extends more service tax. So we'll be weighing that. We'll be weighing access to childcare and many racial equity issues. And of course, our economic development interest in continuing our investments in smart growth so that we can enable our rural communities to develop their downtown village centers with all sorts of projects and smart investments. So we're all at work. John Arison, I'm sure, has lots to update you on also, but we're working, and we're about halfway through the legislative year. We probably will have it extended if this $1 billion comes through from the feds, because we have to appropriate that. So that will take a little longer. But we're halfway through, where the Senate has to get its bills to the House if it's going to make it into law, and the House has to get its bills to us. And so it will be, when we come back from town meeting week, it'll be a very intense couple weeks. But anyway, we're hard at work on your behalf. Thank you for the honor of representing you in Montpelier. All of us love this work and really appreciate your trust. Thanks.
Thank you. And I left out, and I inadvertently left out that if, I'm sure that Allison or Dick have contacts. You just go on the government websites and you can pick up either their phone numbers or their emails. It's probably something.gov, it's fine. I don't want to take up any time in the meetings, but there are contacts to get a hold of them.
Absolutely.
Yep. Is Alice Nitka on at all? Is the third senator or not? I don't see her name, but that doesn't mean that she's not on. Is she maybe at another town meeting or not here? And it's okay. I just wanted to give opportunity. Nothing, Brandon? Nothing. Okay. I'd like to introduce John Arison, who's a new House member, to give him about 30 seconds to say his wonderful time in the House. Go ahead, John.
Brandon, can you change the picture? Thank you, Dave. I serve in the Vermont House, which is called the lower chamber. The only difference really between the House and the Senate is that the doors going into the Senate are larger at the top. Am I right, Allison? That's an inside joke, folks. I'd like to emphasize that yesterday the House passed a bill 335, which was a COVID relief bill that will now go over to the Senate. That was $79 million. $10 million went to business, $5 million to mental health, $20 million to housing and recreation, $15 to air quality in buildings, $20 to the pension fund that Allison mentioned, and $9 in smaller amounts to other funds. Once again, this is federal money that has to be expended. Allison, is this out of Care 1 or Care 2? I think this is Care 1 money.
Some of this is general fund one-time money, and some of this is the leftover corona relief funds that had not been expended and had been clawed back.
Care 1.
But it is also one-time money that is general fund money.
Right.
But all this is projects that we want to quickly infuse that jumpstart the budget, which won't come out till May. So these are all projects these are all projects we're wanting to get sort of going faster, sooner rather than later.
And Allison mentioned the pension fund, which has been underfunded for a number of years, and it's a very, very deep hole that has to be addressed. She also mentioned the state colleges. Student enrollment has gone down. Vermont state colleges and UVM have some of the highest have second highest in-state tuition rate in the country. The state of Vermont has not backed their state college system, and with the declining enrollment and COVID, it's created a real significant financial strain on the state colleges. You may have checked in the news that the state college system is composed of Linden, Johnson, Castleton, and BTC and Community College of Vermont, and they're combining to be more efficient and to be more attuned to the population that we have. I'm not going to bother to repeat what the senators have said. That'd be redundant. There aren't any real controversial bills being brought up in this biennium so far because the concentration has been on COVID relief. There are a couple, something hasn't been mentioned yet, there are two constitutional amendments that are on the table. They were voted to amend the Vermont Constitution takes 2 biennium votes of both the House and Senate approval. They were approved at the last biennium. I assume they'll come from this biennium, and then they'll go to the voters. One is very straightforward, the Vermont Constitution. We've always prided ourselves on having the first Constitution that prohibited slavery. But if you read it more carefully, it only prohibits slavery in adults. And so the wordage is going to be fine-tuned so that slavery is just outright prohibited. The other one that is going to be considerably more controversial is women's right to abortion. And but probably, if all went according to schedule, you might see it on the ballot in 3 years. That's it. Let's get down to business.
Okay, thank you. Can we controlling the screen here? Can we happen? And I don't know any particular the screenshots of whoever the speaker is. So either Brandon or Olivia, whoever's controlling this, can we? Because we're going to have presenters, and I would like it to be on whoever's going to present. Can we make that happen? Good. Okay. Let's now go to the warning. On page 70 of the town report is located the town meeting warning for Saturday, February 27th, and for voting on Tuesday, March 2nd, 2021. Due to the state of emergency, we will be holding a virtual meeting, which that's what we're doing for this year. Voting is by Australian ballot, will be conducted at Martin Memorial Hall at 5259 US Route 5 in Ascutney on Tuesday, the 2nd day of March, 2021. Polls will open at 10 a.m. and close at 7 p.m. To act on the following articles, I would also say that the ballots, we'll probably have a ballot box outside for absentee ballots. Ballots will be accepted until 7 p.m. on Tuesday. The legal voters of the town of Weathersfield, Vermont are hereby notified and warned to meet via Zoom meeting ID 542-595-4364, passcode 8021, on Saturday, the 27th day of February 2021 at 12:30 p.m. to act on the following articles. Article 1. Shall the voters of the town of Weathersfield accept the reports of the town officers for the period of July 1st, 2019 through June 30th, 2020? I note that all of these articles will be voted on by Australian ballot, and there'll be no floor voting here, so this is just a formality. Are there any questions on Article 1? You'll have the opportunity to vote yes or no by ballot on Tuesday, or by the ballot, whether you've got an absentee ballot or in-person voting. Article 2. Shall the voters of the town of Weathersfield, in accordance with 17 VSA Statute 2664 and 22 VSA 142, authorize the Proctor Library trustees to expend such grant monies, gifts, or bequests which may be received by the Proctor Library in accordance with the terms of said grants, gifts, or bequests. Again, this will be voted on by Australian ballot Tuesday, March 2nd. Are there any questions on the article? I'll give a moment. I know that people are still online, and I think it's a procedural thing. The Board of Trustees handle this. Hearing none. Article 3. Shall the voters of the town of Weathersfield authorize the select board to borrow money, if necessary, to pay current expenses in anticipation of taxes in accordance with the provisions of Title 24, Section 1786 of the Vermont statutes annotated. This again will be voted on March 2nd by ballot. Are there any questions on the article? Article 4, to transact any other business deemed proper when met. Is there anything other than what is on this warned meeting document that should be brought up at this time by anyone? If you have a question, if you want to address this article, you could wave or signal, because I know that this virtual stuff is a little bit different than in person. I don't see anything. Brandon, we all set? Okay, good. Article 5, to elect all town officers as required by law. You see the list here. It's on page 72 of your town report. And there are names associated with the terms that have taken out the appropriate papers with the town clerk. They'll be voted on by ballot, the same as what I've explained from Article 1 through 4. You'll have this opportunity to fill out your ballots for these positions. Any questions on Article 5? Hearing none. I'll move to Article 6. Shall the voters of the town of Weathersfield approve the expenditure of $1,440,222 for the support and operation of the town's general fund, of which $1,042,451 shall be raised by property taxation, allowing the select board to set the appropriate tax rate. We have a presentation by the administration, and I would turn to the town manager now to make this. Brandon, it's yours.
Yes, sir. Good afternoon, Weathersfield residents. We prepared a short PowerPoint presentation. I'm going to it right now. So the first order of business in the general fund is the cumulative fund balance overview. Prior to FY20, our excess revenues over expenditures, in other words, our undesignated fund balance was $67,000. And in FY20, our excess revenues over expenditures and our fund balance was $103,000 for a total cumulative fund balance of $170,000. And that raises a lot of questions. Where did that fund balance come from? So we collected $67,000 more in revenue than we anticipated, and we expended $35,000 less than we anticipated. So where did that come from? We recovered more delinquent taxes than we anticipated. Current use was $13,000 higher than anticipated. Our land records produced $5,000 more in revenue than anticipated. Our delinquent tax penalties were $2,000 more than anticipated. And moving over to revenues that were short, because there's a balance that occurs in the general fund budget throughout the year. Dog licenses was short $487. And you can see that water salary reimbursements was short $2,000. Martin Memorial Hall rentals was short $500. And the reason for that was due to COVID-19, we had to shut down this lower half of the building, and we no longer rented it out. Police fines was short $3,000. And you can see that several other items was short in revenue. Again, we expended $35,000 less than we anticipated, and that came from, we had a zoning administrator that had moved on to the Attorney General's office, so there was not a zoning administrator for about 4 months in Weathersfield. That was a large chunk, as you can see, $25,000 of the expenses that we spent less in. Part-time police officers was short $13,000. And then moving over, there's a balance. So in the emergency management line, we spent $9,000 more than we anticipated. That was due to COVID-19. We have recovered those expenses. We applied for a COVID-19 relief grant through the Vermont Department of Taxes, and we were able to obtain $54,000 in funding there to offset that $10,000 and $40,000 in FY21. So what did we ultimately do with the fund balance? The select board made a series of strategic fund balance transfers, and basically what these transfers did was they reduced the tax burden of future equipment and apparatus purchases and tax relief. So the select board designated $17,000 to replace a police cruiser this year. The select board transferred $25,000 into police reserves for a future police cruiser purchase. The select board used $33,000 for tax relief in FY22. The select board moved $33,000 to fire apparatus acquisition reserves and $10,000 to firefighting equipment and gear. So how does this affect the FY22 budget and future budgets? By moving this money into reserves and by moving it into the FY22 tax year, you'll see less of a need to have special articles on the ballot in the future for fire equipment and apparatus purchases and police cruiser purchases and so forth. Here are some quick facts about the proposed FY22 budget. So this budget, again, it uses the cumulative fund balance to reduce the budget by $37,000, or 4%, decreasing taxes as it relates to the general fund. It creates 2 new jobs from the elimination of 1 position and decreases personnel expenses by $5,000. It uses the cumulative fund balance to fund reserves in the police and fire departments, which will assist in the stabilization of the tax rate for several years. It reduces office expenses by 26%. Over the past year, we've significantly enhanced technology in Weathersfield through a grant that we received this year to purchase 12 iPads and 10 laptops for staff, decreasing the use of paper and postage. It increases the employee share of health insurance by 4.5%. Previously, the employee's share of health care was 9.5%, and we moved that to 14%. It increases revenue from the Ascutney Water District by 69%. And basically what that's for is we've merged the management of the water district with the town. So the town administration is now handling all finance and all billing for the water district. And basically what that is an effort to stabilize the district. There's a lot that needs to be done over there. About half of the people in Ascutney have water meters, the other half don't. So we're working on that project as well as many other projects to stabilize the water district. And this budget also decreases IT service and software expenses in the admin budget by $14,000 and increases these expenses in the department budgets that use these services to more accurately demonstrate the cost of operating each department. And here's a chart that we prepared to give you a very transparent overview of our budget over the past 5 years. So you can see in the first slide, in the first chart there, you can see that the fire services budget is $211,000. The police department budget is $320,000. The land use department is $61,000. The listers department is $74,000. The town clerk office is $112,000. Finance department is $74,000. The library is $125,000. And the administration is $459,000. So this is the breakdown of the general fund and where those funds are designated and the offices that are funded within the general fund. The next chart you'll see is the general fund tax need and expense 5-year overview. So as you can see in FY21, The amount of money raised by taxes was $1,080,411. Moving into FY22, the budget is $1,042,000. So we've actually decreased the amount of money necessary and to be raised by taxes in FY22. The next chart on the bottom left-hand corner basically explains the increases and decreases between FY21 and FY22 within the departments in the general fund. As you can see, the administration increased by $13,000. This is offset by the finance department. We eliminated a position in the finance department. We created a position in the administration, and that's the balance there. The library decreased their budget by $13,000. The town clerk increased her budget by $2,700. The lister's budget increased by $13,000. And it's important to note, excuse me?
No?
Oh.
Go ahead, that was
and it's important to note that some of these increases in the departments is due to us moving NEMRIC services, which is our accounting software, and our grand list software, to the departments that used these services. So historically, all of these expenses hit the administration budget, but several departments use these services, including IT services. So in an effort to more adequately account for the expenses in each department, we moved these expenses into the departments that use that software. So you'll see a significant increase here, but in reality, it's because we spread the cost of operating with NEMRIC and so forth through these budgets. Land use increased by $6,500, police department by decreased by $17,000, and fire services increased by $9,800. The chart in the bottom right-hand corner demonstrates the general fund debt schedule. So that's that debt schedule in FY20 consisted of a police cruiser and a fire truck. And that police cruiser was paid off in FY20. So you won't see that flow into FY21 nor into FY22. That falls off, and the fire truck is paid off in FY22. So that's our last payment in FY22. Moving into FY23, that fire truck will no longer be a part of the general fund budget. The next slide that I want to make you aware of are the general fund reserves. So basically, to responsibly run a town, you need to have money in reserves in order to purchase things unexpectedly, or to purchase something and not have it hit the budget all at once in 1 year. If it hits the budget all at once in 1 year, you're going to see spikes in the tax rate for several years. It'll just go up and down, up and down. So what we really try to do here is stabilize the tax rate by moving money into reserves, which is what the select board did this year. So this is the balance of all of our reserves in Weathersfield. We have a reserve account for land and vital records, and that has a balance of $3,600. We have an account for property reappraisal, and that account has $251,000 in it, and it's important to note that this money comes from the state. So they gives us, is that correct, Suzanne? So the state gives us so much money per parcel every year to put into an account to hold a reappraisal in the future. In our fire apparatus acquisition reserve, there's currently $122,000. In our firefighting equipment and gear reserve, there's $29,000. In our town office capital improvements reserve, there's $20,000. There's $6,000 in Veterans Memorial, $19,000 in Parks and Recreation, $4,000 in Center Grove improvements, $3,000 in voting equipment, $11,000 in municipal records computerization, $63,000 in vault usage, $3,000 in Proctor Library capital improvements, $26,000 in the police cruiser reserve, $12,000 in fire protection water supply construction, $50,000 in Martin Memorial Hall capital maintenance and improvements, and 26,000 in the 1879 Perkinsville School Reserve. Does anybody have any questions as it relates to this presentation, the general fund, or anything else?
Are there any questions on Article 6, the presentation of the general fund? I'll wait a moment, and can we have a screen up of who's online so we can see if anybody has any questions? Feel free to wave or just shout out an audio or say that you have a question. I'll just a minute for the public. Does anybody have any questions on Article 6, on the presentation of the general fund? I'll continue to wait just a moment. I know how this internet somewhat presentation. Paul.
David Russell has his hand up.
Okay, we have a David Russell online.
The question is, when is the next reval anticipated?
The next, what was the question?
Revaluation. You've got a reserve there of $236,000. So when's the next reval?
The state of Vermont sets parameters of property valuations between 85% and I believe 110%. Is that correct, Brandon?
115%.
115. My last information was that the town is at 93.11%. The prior year, which is 2020, we were notified on December 28th that was the value. The prior year's value, 2019, was 93.89. So we have, that was the number that I believe. Is that correct, Brandon?
Correct.
So we have slipped 0.7 of 1%. The state does not mandate one until it falls below 85%. So it grants us some leeway to live within those means. And I'm not speaking as a moderator in that terms, I'm speaking as the chairman of the Board of Selectmen. We've been involved with these numbers, we get given these numbers by the town, so.
By the state.
Or by the state, I'm sorry. Yep. Does that answer the question, or?
Yep.
Okay. The balance of the money that's in there is set aside to do that work as well, so whatever was in reserve accounts, that does that. Are there any other questions? I saw board members, but I'd like to give the public a chance to ask questions on the article. Any questions from the public, please? Anybody else, Olivia or Brandon? Can you scroll around, and I'll give a moment for people to raise their hand or speak. Anybody?
If anybody has any questions, feel free to unmute your microphone so we can hear you.
Yep. Okay, I saw a couple of questions from board members. I saw Mike Todd first. I take that question. Go ahead.
Mr. Chair, it's not a question. In the presentation, Brandon, the town manager stated that the funds in that reevaluation account were from the state.
Correct.
That's partially true. Working with the select board and the budget committee in several previous administrations, taxpayers, there were articles to raise money to put into this account, anticipating the day that that we may fall below those numbers that we get from the state and be forced or required to do a reevaluation. So we were preparing for that incident in case it came up. So the money, we wanted to make sure we had the money and that it didn't hit us and raise taxes $250,000 because it's very expensive to do a reeval. So some of that money came from taxpayers over the years. It took several years to build that account.
I think Kelly O'Brien had a question.
Kelly O'Brien's online. I'll take that question. Go ahead. Can you unmute, Kelly? I'll take the question. Go ahead. Do we have do anything, or is it on our end, or?
He was waiting, so.
She's waving?
She was. She's off now. No, she's unmuted.
She's back on. Go ahead, Kelly, I'll take your question.
We can't hear you. You need to unmute your microphone.
She is. I think she is unmuted.
Yep. We can't hear, we don't have any audio, but if you type in your question, I'm sure somebody'd be able to get it and then we could read it. I don't know if we're having a little problem with the connection or something. While we're waiting for that, did you have a question, Paul?
No, I was helping with.
Okay, you're helping with technology. Good. Okay. Did we get that question in yet, or is it an audio? Is it our problem or not?
I just sent her a message.
Good.
She said she's all set.
Okay. Good. Are there any other questions on Article 6 for the general fund, for the budget presentation made by the administration? Any other questions? Okay, let's move to Article 7. Shall the voters of the town of Weathersfield approve the expenditure of $1,154,392 for the support and the operation of the town's highway fund, of which $946,770 shall be raised by property taxes, allowing the select board to set the appropriate tax rate. I will turn over the floor to, I believe John Arison will make the presentation in combination with the administration.
Thank you, Dave. First, I'd like to thank the Highway Department for the extremely old-time traditional winter that we've experienced. Everything from the 40-plus inches in December to the rain that followed, and recently snow rain event that created ice, and seems like a 3 inches every 2 days. When you see the yellow lights on the truck, keep in mind that the drivers may have been out already for 8 hours plus, 12 hours. They're very busy. They're running a plow, they're running a wing, they're running a sander. They're trying to watch traffic, they're trying to watch the road. Give them a break. But thank you very much to the highway crew for keeping our roads in exceptional shape. And keep in mind, we still got mud season to go through. Next slide. The highway fund also ran in the black this year. We're under budget by $97,000 plus. And this slide shows you the various areas that we underspent. And one thing I want to mention on Article 7 total is that $115,000 of that comes from the state. That's the number that we plugged in, and it could change a little bit, but we don't anticipate it changing very much. Next slide. This shows you the fund balances that we anticipate. We expended $82,000 less. $86,270 less than what we anticipated. Some of it was in wages. Last winter was not as tough as this winter, so the overtime wages didn't go over regular wages because so new employees came on, insurance changed. They might have come in at a lower rate. Salt was under. Once again, it's an unknown till you get into the season. A little bit of money came in on stormwater permits, came in all good. We underspent on culverts, snowplow, blades, repairs and supplies. Anyway, it goes right down the list of all the items that we underspent on. Next slide. Okay, what did we do with the money that we didn't spend? We put $60,000 into highway equipment acquisition. We have 2 reserve funds in the highway. One is from the things you see with wheels, and one is for capital maintenance. And we put 60 into each account. Once again, these, as was explained earlier, the reserve accounts are to keep the tax rate from fluctuating up and down with unanticipated expenses. It gives us the ability to, next year we'll be looking probably at a highway truck, and it gives us a reserve to tap into. So we aren't asking the taxpayers to fork over the full amount for a purchase. We were able to, let me back up. Last year, the voters agreed to buy a new grader, and we were able to put $45,000 of undesignated funds into the grader purchase to keep our payments low. And $25,000 was left over that we're leaving in reserve in the highway. And I want to go back on the grader for a second. With the purchase price, we were able to do two things. One was buy the unit with a full 7-year warranty. Two, a 5-year maintenance plan. We don't have to touch the grader other than maybe tires for 5 years. Caterpillar will come in and do all the work, and all of this was done under the budget that you folks approved last year. And was there anything wrong with the old grader? That's a matter of opinion. They're a very expensive piece of equipment, and when something breaks, it's very expensive. That unit that we got rid of was warranted till December of, if I get this right, the warranty on it ran out last December, and lo and behold, it chose to break down very shortly thereafter. Caterpillar treated us very fair because we'd already placed the order for the new one. But nonetheless, these units are extremely expensive to be worked on, and it's better to keep that unit under warranty. So in other words, you may see us replacing the grader in anywhere from 5 to 7 years just to keep it under warranty. And we're finding that is, with the repairs, I'm sure if anybody goes to a dealership and has their car worked on, you're finding it's so expensive. We're going to try to lean towards keeping more and more equipment under warranty. This is a graph showing the trending of expenses, and once again, the highway is basically level funded. Some things have gone up, some have gone down. An unknown that's always a crapshoot is diesel fuel. I'm sure anybody that's filled their car up lately has noticed fuel prices going up. We may or may not have enough in this budget to cover diesel expenses, but it's just one line item in the budget. So if diesel continues to climb like it looks like it's gonna, we just gotta watch the pennies until we get out of the fiscal year, which will end in June of 22. Long-term debt. This ties into the reserve funds in equipment that we have payments on. I believe that the next unit that's up to be replaced will be a dump truck. Basically, we buy a dump truck about every 3 years. We got some loader that's starting to get some time on it. Reserves. Earlier I mentioned the two reserve funds, the highway equipment acquisition that currently has $154,212 in it, and the capital maintenance improvements has $136,101 in it. And what that allows us to do, if a grant comes in for anything, usually there's a matching amount that the town has to contribute, and if it's a $100,000 project, and it requires a 25% match, we cough up with $25,000, we get a $100,000 project done for $25,000, and the money's there. If it's not built into the budget and sitting in the bank, you miss the opportunity. The quick facts on the budget, that it's, once again, same tax revenue as last year, no increase. We've asked the employees, as everybody knows, health insurance goes up, up, up. The employees have agreed to allow, to pay a little bit more on their insurance. The budget that, as we presented it, includes the payments on the grader and the dump truck. So that was, wouldn't have been built into last year. So those are two significant payments that have been built into the budget, still without increasing the overall budget. As I mentioned earlier, the maintenance and warranty plan on the grader, and we reduced garage and truck expenses by $12,500. Next quick fact sheet. Most categories remain the same. Paving, salt, and gravel, those are the two big ones in highway, have stayed the same. Same thing with culverts, road signs, and contract work. We did increase the roadside mowing. We've had a pretty good luck. We found a contractor that we're happy with after a couple years of disappointment. And we feel that a couple $1,000s more for roadside mowing was prudent. We reduced diesel fuel by $5,000 because up until the last month, it looked like diesel fuels that was a safe bet. Well, crystal ball sometimes a little bit cloudy.
You all set, John?
Yes.
Are there any questions on Article 7, which is the proposed highway budget for fiscal year 21-22 for the town? Are there any questions on highway? I'll give a minute here just for a second to let's go up on the screen to see if we see any hands or...
David Russell's up.
What's that?
David Russell's up.
David Russell, go ahead. Question?
Yeah, escape.
The question has to do with the 4.5% increase in health insurance costs for workers. I'm not sure what the logic is, but transferring expenses to employees doesn't appeal to me.
Brandon, do you want to take that question, please?
Yep. So the cost of health insurance for the employee was 9.5%, and at the school it's 20%. So we felt that it would be fair to get closer to what the school's percentage is of 20%, and we came to an agreement on 14%.
The only thing that I would add, does that answer the question?
Yeah, I'm not happy with it, but yes.
Okay. Are there any other questions from the public about Article 7 on the highway? I don't hear any, but I don't see anybody up on the screen either that are waving or speaking. Okay. As the chairman of the board for the year, I'd like to thank the administration on both the general fund and the highway fund. So maybe this is like a little bit of an add-on as well to talk about healthcare, but we did allow for 2% pay increases for all across the board. So while we asked all of the contribution to be a little bit stronger, we do have the plans on healthcare. We did raise pay as well in these budgets across the board. So that is a factor on all people that work for the town. Let me move on then. Hearing no other questions on the highway fund, I'll leave one more time. Any questions on Article 7?
Just as a point of order, does the highway fund include the transfer station?
No, not yet. We're getting to that on Article 8.
Okay.
So I'll read Article 8. Shall the voters of the town of Weathersfield approve the expenditure of $289,049 for the support and the operation of the town's solid waste management facility? These monies shall be raised by non-tax revenues. I'll turn the floor over to Paul Tillman, who is the select board's representative for solid waste. Between him and the management and the town manager, they have a presentation.
Hi, this is
gonna be probably pretty quick here. I mean, the slide that you've got up is just some, proposed, budget quick facts. There's a couple of key items that I just wanted to note out of this. I wanted to note that, the increased revenue from West Windsor, is up by 9,000. That's due to the increased, just paying attention to the dump stickers, the transfer stickers and things on the vehicles. I want to also thank the crew at the transfer station for actually, helping us with that enforcement, making sure that the stickers are on the vehicles. And I know a lot of people in town have had some frustration with that, not having theirs at a certain time when they go. But as you can see from these numbers, it's definitely helped with the revenue there. The other quick item on here I wanted to let everyone know is the recycling expenses have increased by $8,500. That is a continuing trend. If anybody's paying attention to any of the news or anything, they will definitely see that this is increasing. So we're going to have to keep a close eye on that. Just quickly too, the C&D tippage has decreased by $5,260 due to the fact of just monitoring what is going in for the C&D and the amount that we've allowing to go in. Not on the slide, but one quick thing too I want to mention is that Weathersfield, Reading, and West Windsor, we've established a transfer station joint committee, which is basically a partnership among the three towns to create a fair and equal funding structure for the three towns. And that is presently in the works. We're coming up with some ideas and some things on how we can all work together with the transfer station. Next slide, I think we'll just basically some graphs to indicate the same things that I've mentioned. If you look at the top right graph where it says solid waste assessments by town, the 5-year average, you can just see that West Weathersfield is up the amount that I mentioned in the gray bar. And then the bottom right corner, it says tippage and recycling expenses. You can also, well, actually on the screen it might be off the corner a little bit, but you can definitely see that we're up that 8,000 something for recycling. So, and that's going to continue as a trend. So we'll have to keep an eye on that. I think that's it.
Any added questions, Brandon, from the town manager on solid waste?
Can you put the
I know the board has worked this year to strengthen our alliance with West Windsor and Reading, and as Paul said, this will continue, that they are interested in the facility that we have for sharing. I think it's really important that the rural towns share on some of this infrastructure, and we're trying to make it more even. Is there anything to add to that, Brandon? No, nothing for you to add?
No, sir.
Okay. Are there any questions? Are there any questions at this time on Article 8, dealing with the solid waste facility?
David Russell has a question.
Okay. David Russell, will take your question.
It's a little bit more of a comment, and that is that I share a feeling with a number of people who were very sad to see the swap shop disappear. And it occurred to me over the course of this year that since the food shelf was being operated out of the elementary school, that there might be some facility that the town could consider for repurposing items that would be useful to some people and not to others. Not sure how you pursue that, but it's just a thought.
We did have that suggestion also taken up at our table a meeting or two ago, and that is being talked about right now, potentially not so much aligning a facility, but to coordinate online about what things may or may not be offered. So that's a very good suggestion, and we did take that up at the select board a couple of meetings ago. So that is I urge you that if you're interested to keep contact with the town office, and we'll put it on the agenda. So it's something we're thinking about. there any other questions on the article dealing with the solid waste facility?
There's a comment in chat from Carol.
Another comment? Go ahead, take the comment, please.
Why can't we have clothes recycling or cloth recycling? Who's asking the question?
Who?
Carol Orth.
So Carol Orth has a question. Can someone repeat that for the matter of the record, please?
Why can't we have cloth recycling?
So she's asking for cloth recycling. I'll turn the question over to either Paul or Brandon, the town manager.
I don't have a direct answer for that, but I'll see if Brandon has a good one. If not, we will definitely look into that and see why and be able to answer that for you. Do you have anything on that, Brandon?
I do not have an answer right now, but if you would please type your email and phone number into the chat, and we'll get back to you next week with an email with an answer.
Good question. Thank you.
Did you have a question, John?
No,
Recognize
just
John.
kind of an answer. All recycling depends on market. And we used to have somebody that would come in and pick it up. Not that we wanted to make money on it, we just wanted to see it go to a purpose. A lot of the old cloth actually goes into making what they call rag paper. But when that vendor stopped picking it up, if you've noticed, what used to be the yellow boxes you used to see around, they're gone also. So just like all recycling, it's all driven by market.
Are there any other questions on Article 8, which deals with the solid waste facility and the operating budget for the fiscal year 21 to 2022? Any other questions? I don't see any around the table. Any other questions online? Nothing. That's the end of the articles for the annual town meeting in Weathersfield in 2021. On Article 4, we already went through the other articles of business thought proper at this time, so there are no other articles. I'd like to thank everybody for joining us online and continue to ask questions if you have them of the administration, to contact the office or the appropriate people here. And I'd like to thank all the employees and the volunteers of the town for this year, and remind people that voting will be held on March 2nd. The polls open here, or to deposit your absentee ballot either through the door or outside in the ballot box. The polls open at 10 a.m. and they close at 7 p.m. on Tuesday, March 2nd. Please get out and vote. We appreciate that. Hearing no other comments, are there any other questions about this town meeting, either online or here in person? Joey Jarvis.
I just wanted to state that last year we had a lot of open vacancies on various committees and things, and we're going to be doing some appointments, I assume, starting Monday at the meeting. So get a letter in if you're interested in being involved, or if you have anything that you want taken up at a meeting. I'm available all the time. Social media numbers are on the new website that's been redesigned recently. Please reach out and get involved. It's the only way that we can address community concerns.
Those appointments will start, we've put that up on the website as well. Those appointments will be starting to be made on March 4th, which is the Thursday night. We have a meeting scheduled to reorganize the board at 6:30 p.m. So that's where, we don't have a meeting on Monday night. We have one on Thursday, March 4th. Are there any other questions or comments dealing with the town meeting in 2021? Hearing none, I'd like a motion to adjourn.
So move.
Is there a second?
Second.
The motion been made and seconded to adjourn the Weathersfield Town Meeting in 2021. Is there any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you very much.
Thank you for mentioning that. That was a good catch.